Something to note, when you're around Blair, your world revolves around her. In my case, my home was hers, despite her name not being on it. I had no friends out in Colorado, a state that I moved to at the behest of Blair. Only Blair's friends were out here. All of my connections had to be approved by her. I wasn't allowed to be friends with people she didn't like, such as Click and OneTopic, or even Wonder, once that bridge was burned and reduced to cinders. I was even in a position where my finances were nearly entirely controlled by her, from what debts I took on to later being the fact that she was the person who signed my paychecks. All while my world was painted to me in a light where I should be grateful for her generosity.
Any and all accusations of criminal behavior mentioned within this video are currently only alleged, as they have not been proven nor disproven in a court of law. Thank you. Blair, also known formally as iilluminaughtii on YouTube, is a content creator who specializes in the production of short documentary-style videos. Often summarizing issues that her videos discuss, she makes topics fairly easy to comprehend and allows room for her audience to look further into subjects to gain a broader perspective on the issues. Recently, Blair has been facing backlash literally all over the internet, Twitter, YouTube, other social media platforms. What started as just a misplaced ego has now morphed into a variety of accusations that all stem from first-hand and eyewitness accounts of mistreatment. It should be noted that Blair does not work alone. She employs a wide team of people, researchers, editors, and no doubt scriptwriters. Many people on Twitter have echoed the same sentiments that I have, in that Blair is essentially just the voice-over face of the channel, and it's really unknown to bystanders and myself how much she really contributes in terms of scripting and research for her content. Putting this out here, additionally to what I had in the beginning, little snippet in the beginning of the video, content warnings for this video are going to include things like stalking, harassment, self-harm behavior, mental health disorders, employee mistreatment, just a whole lot. This is also going to be a just ungodly, incredibly long video, so please get comfortable and proceed with caution. Hey there, I'm here to interrupt your regularly scheduled entertainment. At the time of scripting this video, I'm aware that Blair has made statements on Twitter about the accusations lobbied against her being false and that she's attempting to gather relevant proof to disprove the accusations, blah blah. With that being said, I'm going to talk about the accusations and the proof that have come forward by the accusers against Blair, because from what I'm seeing and where I'm sitting, the proof that the accusers have put forth is already pretty damning, even without her, saying or mentioning anything to the contrary, and it's incredibly difficult for me to see a way for Blair to really disprove a lot of these accusations. Despite my belief in her accusers, I do have to firmly note that, again, any and all criminal activity mentioned within this video is alleged, and currently nothing has been settled in a court of law. That being said, however, Blair has elected to send out cease and desist notices and threats against involved parties, particularly Wonderstruck and OzMedia, two people whom she has lived with previously. Now I'll touch more on this and why this is an issue way later in the video. When this hurricane of almost literal bullshit started, it all started from Blair tweeting out a very bold accusation that one of the editors for the Legal Eagle YouTube channel was trying to steal her editing style that her channel uses for her videos. And she even had screenshots of emails to prove this claim of hers, which is just incredibly impressive, right? Obviously, this was just totally an open and shut case of theft and intellectual infringement, and everybody clapped for Blair for shutting down this super duper evil other YouTuber, Legal Eagle. But alas, in case you can't tell sarcasm, no, that's not actually what happened. Blair tweeted out that one of Legal Eagle's editors was attempting to steal the editing style from her team that they used on her videos. With this accusation, she also said that the editor claimed that they would just use the style even if Blair's editors didn't tell them how to do it, as they would just figure it out on their own and do it anyway. Effectively, Blair was attempting to put this editor into a hamburger cosplay and point out that they were a rotten copycat thief, and with putting Legal Eagle's team on blast by tagging their Twitter account in the original accusation, This was an attempt to rally her fan base against Legal Eagle, essentially attempting to form a hate mob. You could have possibly made arguments in my comments section that this is not what she was actually trying to do, that she just wanted to raise awareness for the theft issue, but when you have an audience as large as Blair's, which is less now due to all the shit going on, even by stating, don't go after these people, oh my god, no harassment, your fan base is still going to try to protect your honor in some way, because that's just one of the many symptoms of having a parasocial relationship. And another thing to know, this is not the first time that Blair has tried to take down another creator for something that she disliked. But we'll get more into that in a bit. From Legal Eagle's response to these accusations, we can infer that Blair did not really make an attempt at first to try to rectify the situation privately, because if she did, she might have been able to realize just how fucking stupid these accusations were, and honestly how she is just severely lacking in reading comprehension. The severe lack of reading comprehension is what makes me think that she has little to nothing to do with the script writing process and research on her own channel. First of all, let's get into this idiocracy that is style theft. As an artist, this is not the first time that I've heard the term of style theft thrown around, and I feel like my brain is literally just going to melt out of my ears every time I hear it brought up. Style theft is not a thing. A style is something that is unique to an artist or, editor or whatever. Just a style is something unique to a creator, right? With many insecure artists or creators, they'll attribute to style theft as when someone takes inspiration from them, specifically in artwork, because, again, I'm an artist, so that's the examples that I'm using. Basically, they'll think that if someone takes inspiration from them and starts to incorporate aspects of that inspiration into their own work, that it means that they're stealing from them. Which, unless the other person is just outright tracing the original artist's work, there will never be a one-to-one recreation of that original artist's works. And for the quick record, no, using AI image generators don't make you an artist, so we're not even going to discuss that. When the notion of style theft was first a really hot topic within the art community, I would often see people gripe on and on about how hard they worked for years and years to develop their style and they didn't want someone else copying it because it was all theirs. Which, yeah, that's the fact of life. Every artist works hard. Art is hard, and it takes a long time to make. But what made you want to make things in that way that you do? Because I absolutely promise you that you just didn't come up with it on your own. Even subconsciously, you looked at something someone else did and went, huh, that's cool, I'm gonna do that. That's how inspiration works, and that is how styles develop over time. If you're a content creator, look at the things that you made a couple of years ago as opposed to the things that you're making right now. Most likely, those two things won't even really look like they were made by the same person, and that's a good thing. It means you're evolving your skills, and that's what's supposed to happen. So if someone saw something you did on your work and wanted to do that thing too, you should be flattered, honored. As for this whole spiel, the same thing with the so-called editing style theft that Blair tried to accuse Legal Eagle's editor Danny of, it's just not fucking possible. There's only so many things an editing software is actually capable of doing, and it's not uncommon for people to do the same exact effects on their videos because that's what the software is capable of. And for the fact that this was all rooted over a ripped paper effect and a word highlighter is absolutely fucking outrageous on its own. Reiterating what dozens of other people have already stated, that shit is just so fucking common. I've seen thousands of YouTube videos and television documentaries that all use those effects because it's just another pre-existing effect that a lot of editing softwares have. With this huge ego, I'm shocked that this is what really pushed everything over the edge for Blair. Now let me explain this whole insufferable shit show even more and how it's even worse. The before mentioned lack of reading comprehension that Blair has. First and foremost, I know that she was freaking out about the ripped paper and the highlighter, but the email in question that she shows as proof that Danny was trying to steal her editing style, the email never mentions the ripped paper or highlight text effect that she's claiming in her tweets. The editor was asking about a completely different effect that her team was using on a football video. The message the editor sent asked for which plugin that Blair's editor was using for the desired effect, which was like popping out color or something in a 3D effect, right? To put it as simply as possible, the plugin would have basically just been a shortcut to generate these effects within the editing software. This editor most likely already knew how to make the effects, subsequently not the effects that Blair is accusing them of stealing, but they were just asking for a more streamlined process and how to do the effect more efficiently. Since this effect, as well as other effects, are generic as hell, and no one owns the rights to them, the editor, not getting a response to the plugin inquiry and effectively said after the fact that they would just figure it out elsewhere, this editor was not ever asking for any kind of permission to use these effects, and wasn't Batman villain stating that they would use them even if Blair and her team said no, because these effects are not owned by Blair nor her team. They do not, and will never have the authority to demand someone not use these effects. I mentioned this was like an issue of ego, right? Because the editor had mentioned within Blair's Discord server to have been like inspired by her work, and that the video that they were working on was actually a personal project, one completely unrelated to Legal Eagle and his content. The true kicker in all of this, though, something that I outright, like, completely laughed out loud about when I first saw it, was the fact that Legal Eagle had to, like, graciously remind Blair, put her in her place if you want to be quirky about it, that the Legal Eagle channel has actually been using the ripped paper and highlighter effects long before Blair had started to incorporate them into her own content. But then again, as some other accusations will point out, Blair is not the best at double-checking stuff. After facing the backlash with Legal Eagle's response to her, Blair finally took it to the DMs to privately resolve the issue at hand. You know, kicked puppy with the tail between her legs. Like, you know, she should have done in the first place, which resulted in her apologizing to Legal Eagle. However, even with the issue with Legal Eagle seemingly to have been resolved, she was still in a shitload of trouble with many accusations of varying issues starting to pour to the surface. As the Legal Eagle situation was still actively unfolding, one of the reoccurring things I started to see was people repeatedly putting Blair on blast for plagiarism. This was mostly due to the hypocritical irony of her claiming someone else was stealing from her, only for her to be stealing from other creators. One of the most specific cases of plagiarism highlighted by accusers on Twitter came from the user called HBomberGuy, who helpfully supplied video evidence of Blair almost, keyword almost, word for word repeating another documentary on the same exact subject.
Professor Hugh Fudenberg.
Professor Fudenberg has long been controversial.
A man named Hugh Fudenberg, a former immunologist who has been long controversial.
In 1989, he was caught up in a bizarre lawsuit involving the Food and Drug Administration, which told him he had to stop injecting his autistic child patients with blood products.
In 1989, he was caught up in a bizarre lawsuit with the Food and Drug Administration, which told him he had to stop injecting his autistic patients with blood products.
She would later address these accusations of plagiarism in her Illuminati exposed pseudo-apology, video, whatever you want to call it, stating that it was not plagiarism, but rather a quote from the documentary, and she acknowledged that it was not displayed clearly in her videos that the statements were a quote.
Harris posted this video saying, and I quote, "Personally, at Illuminaughtii, I would define plagiarism as something a bit more specific. For example, copying someone else's documentary directly into your script." End quote. However, in his own video, he shows where I'm audibly quoting a direct line from the documentary, and even visually you can see it on the screen with the quotation marks. Additionally, you can even see the dual ellipses on either end of that quote, indicating that more of that source was being cited.
But this is not entirely truthful either, in my opinion, or she again just isn't reading what's being thrown on the screen. Because, she's not editing her own video. She has a team for that. The quote in which she was supplied on the screen was not attributed to the correct sourcing, and was not the dialogue in which she was being accused of plagiarizing from the original documentary. The documentary, and where her dialogue had came from, was from MMR, What They Didn't Tell You, by Brian Deere, which she did source in her, paste bin document, kinda confusedly, because she doesn't fucking label anything. However, on the screen where she claims the credit for the quote states, "Lawsuit with FDA in 1989, which is not where the quote that she is quoting is from, which obviously makes it seem that she's attributing the on-screen quote with just that lawsuit, while in reality she had word-for-word repeated Brian Deere's documentary for several sentences, really. When it comes to Blair and her plagiarism, I have to think on if Blair, actively really endorses the plagiarism, or if she just, never ever double checks with her scriptwriters. Like, do not read over everything first. It might be possible that her ego just won't allow her to admit fault within herself for not double checking the sources. This could be due to just willful negligence, or simply the overwhelming fact that Blair herself admitted to having a completely obscene amount of sources for her videos, which no doubt most of them are completely irrelevant to the actual topic at hand. While Blair has not been shy over the years about putting former team members on blast during other collaboration channels, I don't really believe that she was as much as the face of those other channels as opposed to she is for the Illuminati channel. It might be wistful thinking on my part that she just never fact-checked and the plagiary checked and whatnot for the scripts that she was handed off due to her pattern of behavior to paint herself in the light of the victim. Plus, as a petty note, I guess it would take away from the content farm like speed in which she pumps out content if she actually had to double check and read over every single script that fell into her hands.
And what's that? Practically catty corner to the bog? Yeah, that would be a landfill.
These products are made from a soil that is right next to a landfill. As a bit of a disclaimer, I'm not a scientist or a biologist.
And full disclosure, I'm not a scientist or a biologist or a chemist or any of that.
Fulvic acid is apparently a humic substance, which means it's a naturally occurring compound found in soils, compost, marine sediments, and even sewage.
Fulvic acid, which is a naturally occurring substance found in soils, compost, marine sediments, and sewage.
As she was facing the tons and tons of backlash over her wild accusations lobbied against Legal Eagle, she made posts stating that there were attempts made to hack her accounts, which, with the previous knowledge that she does anything in order to paint herself in the light of the victim, I'm personally unsure if these hacking attempts really happened. It's like one of those cry wolf scenarios, like even if it really happened, can you really believe her? While the internet is frankly kind of crazy, I also not put it past someone this comfortable with lying to state something like this in order just to try to get the heat off of herself from her actions, in order to once again gain sympathy. It is probably her penchant for saying and doing things that, would elicit pity from her audience that brought out the former members of the collaboration channel SadMilk to speak out against her. They all began rather extensively long post threads, all amounting to very similar claims of that the egotistical behavior that Blair exhibited through the Legal Eagle false call-out was not new and was actually something that she had been doing for a very, very long time. One of the creators to come forward was called theclick. He highlighted an abusive pattern of behavior of Blair lashing out against him and other members of the channel when her expectations were not met. He also recounts that after members of the team began to leave, Blair would post things to Twitter and Reddit in an effort to defame their character. Click specifically points out in the 6th tweet of his thread that Blair had the habit of seeking out people who already disliked a person she was having problems with in order to gain allies and rally people behind her cause. This behavior, in my opinion, is very similar to her attempts to rally her fan base against Legal Eagle and his editor. When questioned about her motives, Blair would seek out any provable problematic content her detractors had, even if it was over 10 years old, in order to seem the more virtuous person. This is seen more in detail not only in her own quote-unquote apology video, in which she accuses Click of condoning pedophilia of all things, but also Click showing in his own video on the subject that she would pay people off to find problematic content. Click would also state in this thread that Blair would lash out due to him being slowly becoming more popular than her, evident by his Discord server gaining more members than her own. He mentioned that she threatened to fire him from SadMilk if he didn't meet her staffing demands, and that she had other people on the server to spy on him and his staff in order to keep him under control, even after she left. Later, we'll also learn that Blair would use alt accounts to spread smear campaigns against those that she did not like, which would lead me to speculate that maybe she had alt accounts within Click's server in order to make it seem like she wasn't the one that was actively gathering information herself after they had their falling out. The second notable person from SadMilk to speak out against Blair was a content creator called Wonderstruck. Wonderstruck specifically was employed by the SadMilk team, particularly Blair, as an editor for the channel. He goes into more detail in both his Twitter thread and later YouTube video about Blair's abusive business practices as his boss, even citing how she attempted to blur the boundary of employer and employee by inviting Wonder to live with her and discussing plans to create an employee housing community. Which, a company town, which is really abusive. But we'll get into more of that later. Wonder corroborates the claims made by the former SadMilk members of Blair's need to villainize those that she did not like, and her angry outburst towards her friends. Wonder specifies that Blair's like or dislike of a person flipped very suddenly, and often without warning, if she felt threatened or after the clique and other members of the group had left, things like that. She would endlessly talk down on them and stalk their social media pages. If you weren't with her, you were against her. He would also state that her vitriol against those that she disliked went far enough that she would try to send out legal notices to those that talked negatively about her in order to try to silence them, only for her lawyer to basically tell her that she legally couldn't stop people from having opinions about her, which apparently she didn't like. With this in mind, it is another provable pattern of behavior, as she is currently sending out cease and desist notices against at least 2 of the 4 members that have spoken out against her. With testimonies from both Click and Wonder, anyone experienced with emotionally abusive people might take note at this point that Blair needed to villainize former friends, and if you're not with me, you're against me mentality is a very common tactic when abusers are trying to alienate people from their support networks in order to have better control of them. The tweet by Wonder that reads, "And like everyone else, I got shut out, trash talked, and the people I had made efforts to be friends with wouldn't even acknowledge my existence. For me, though, I had already moved states under good faith I was bettering my life." This is especially alarming to me as a victim of this kind of abuse. The warning signs can get so murky if you've never experienced being around this kind of abuser. Blair's attempts to isolate Wonder seem to have been successful, since he cites becoming essentially homeless after he left her house, and no former friends would speak with him, presumably due to Blair villainizing him, as she had been known to do with anyone else who caused her problems. OzMedia, another former roommate of Blair's, and ex-boyfriend as we'll come to learn later, goes into detail about Blair's management of the SadMilk channel. He cites in his Twitter thread that Blair believed that the only real thing that she contributed to the project was her skills as a manager, because of her lack of personality or something like that, and would feel threatened and lash out whenever someone would step up and try to help her, despite also complaining that, wow, nobody wants to help her. This insecurity, combined with her before cited lack of organization skills, made for a really uncomfortable work environment experience, according to the former members of the channel. Additionally to the business side of things, OzMedia will collaborate former statements made by Click in which Blair would have heavily monitored comments on the SadMilk videos, deleting critical comments of herself and remaining team members, but would approve negative comments directed at the members who had left the project. This is further examples of her, completely insecure personality that I mentioned before, and how she cannot be wrong or have people criticize her behavior. These accusations of Blair deleting comments was something also mentioned by people when her Illuminati exposed video first released. It is something to note when watching an influencer's apology video or anything similar to an apology video, like an addressing video or whatever you want to call it, like Blair's, since it's not really an apology. If all of the comments on the video are only positive to the video and nothing is critical of the person or video, more than likely the comments have been deleted, monitored, censored, or whatever else you want to call them. It's just not realistic for everyone who watched an apology video to agree with the points made during the video. Unfortunately, OzMedia would also state that he was well aware of Blair's knack for villainizing those that she did not like, and would often act as a middleman between Blair and the individual she was attempting to attack, often siding with Blair in the confrontations, even if Blair was rightfully in the wrong. Basically admitting to being a completely enabling yes man to Blair. However, from his recount of his time living with Blair, it's no surprise that he would end up in that kind of role, since Blair would give him ultimatums of choosing between her or his other friends, like Click and OneTopic. While it was never a great thing that OzMedia was an enabler to Blair's behavior, it is something that is a little more complicated than just right and wrong, since Blair has already proven to have the capacity of assassinating the character of those that she disliked, like Click and Wonderstruck, effectively using this ability of hers to try to alienate people and separate them from their support networks, something she was completely successful in doing with Wonderstruck. With this knowledge, while it's unknown where exactly in all of these situations OzMedia fit into the timeline, hindsight is 2020, and knowing that if he did speak out against her at the time that he was involved, she could have, and probably would have, viciously lashed out at him, as well as try and ruin his friendships and career. OneTopic, another creator who had worked in the same capacity with Blair, also spoke out against her. His recounting of events is more centralized to the business aspect of the collab channel as opposed to anything personal, citing that it was fun at first but quickly turned stressful the longer the channel went on. He voiced how their friend group started with real feelings of camaraderie and how they were really eager to help one another, but unfortunately things just took a sour turn as expectations for SadMilk started to shift into being less of a fun group project that they could work on in their leisure to something that ended up taking more and more of everyone's time, leaving them without the time to work on their own personal projects individually. Basically, SadMilk became a content farm. As the work on the channel began to pile up into more and more things to do, OneTopic brings up that the fighting began to break out between the members. While he and other members tried to mediate conflict, he acknowledges that not everyone within the group had good intentions during discussions related to the fighting. OneTopic and a couple of other people left SadMilk in order to focus on their own work and mental health, but despite if that departure was amicable or not, rumors began to spread and character assassination attempts started flying out to paint the people who left in a bad light, citing that one rumor was that the channel was better off without him and the others that had left. He mentions in this vein that those who left SadMilk had to work extensively to try to fix their reputations privately, while rumors continued to get worse about them, something OneTopic mentions being exhausting and mentally draining. It is to note that during this entire thread by OneTopic about his time in SadMilk and his departure, that he never outright once stated Blair's name or blamed her for anything that happened during or following the gradual collapse of the channel. While we can infer from the other statements by Click, Wonder, and OzMedia that Blair was the root cause of all the issues, OneTopic continued to try to maintain the peace of the now disbanded group by not pointing any fingers directly at one person. Which honestly is far more kindness than this situation really seems to have deserved, especially given that all four of these individuals have been or would become victims of Blair's propensity for demonizing people who aren't completely kissing her ass. With the allegations piling up against her, by everybody it seems at this point, Blair had made a response video to everything in which she attempted to apologize for things that she did wrong and address the things in which she felt she had no fault in. While not responding to every single point in the threads made against her, she picks out instances to comment on in order to try to make the audience question the credibility, even overall intelligence of her detractors. We see this tactic actually a lot in influencer spaces when accusations are thrown around. Due to the influencer knowing that there's hard evidence to the contrary, they will focus on the claims that aren't true or lack evidence in order to make, their detractors seem like liars. This is often one aspect of something called the perfect victim, in which a victim isn't believed unless they are a perfect saint that has literally done nothing wrong in their entire life. We saw this predominantly in the Colleen Ballinger situation, in which her ukulele song belittled her detractors because everyone makes mistakes, and how her lawyer made statements to refute the claims of her performing in blackface, since really it was just green face paint from performing as Elphaba from Wicked. If you can't dispute everything, shift the focus onto things that don't matter in the long scheme of things. Then you go for the throat while their heads are turned. In the beginning disclaimers for her video, Blair mentions that there was a lot of personal things brought up about her that she did not want to be used for content fuel, in her words. The only real thing among these threads that were made about her that I seen that could have kind of been interpreted as a personal thing to be used against her was like a photo of her room, which I'll touch on more in a bit. The first thing that she really tries to address within this video is the accusations she made against Legal Eagle, which kind of makes sense since that's pretty much what snowballed this entire situation to start. And as my section of this video states, it's everyone else's fault. Right away, we see that Blair is going to take the bare minimum amount of accountability for her behavior, stating that it was actually her editors that came to her with the issues regarding Devon's team potentially copying the Illuminati video editing style. She states that she jumped onto these accusations with her editing team throwing out, and began to make accusations public against Devon and his team without really doing her own research, which is really odd for someone who's previously boasted about having so many resources in all of her content because she is just so dedicated to research.
And for those unaware, a short story. My editors came to me about how parts of a Legal Eagle video looked similar to our videos. And then there were messages and an email from one of Legal Eagle's editors asking for more information about how we do certain effects. I looked at the compared images that were brought to me and I said, wow, that does look pretty similar, and I impulsively posted about it on Twitter. Truthfully, I should have looked into this more instead of just putting the information out there the second I had a gut reaction about it.
She takes fault in making the impulsive post, saying that she should have reached out privately about the emails that she was being sent from Danny the editor, quote, to ask about what they were about. Which makes my point yet again that she has no real reading comprehension skills whatsoever, because the email literally just reads, quote, "Hey Blair," addressed directly to her. "I work as an editor for Legal Eagle, and I was wondering if there was some After Effects plugin you guys used for the intro of the first NFL video, while the lighter colors appear to stick out in 3D. We could recreate it, but figured there was probably a faster method that you guys were using. Please cite this timestamp in the video if you forgot about me already making this point before, but let's be short about it. Sharing information and helping others learn new skill sets is not theft." Blair did not need to reach out to Devin to ask about what the email meant. She could have just replied to the editor, replied to the email, replied to him on her Discord server, anything. In fact, she could have just read the email and not been fucking stupid. She talks about apologizing to Devin privately, which is another thing I mentioned earlier in the video that the SadMilk members cited she was prone to do. Starting conflict publicly, but resolving it privately. This is honestly also just shit behavior in my opinion. If she was in the right about this situation, this is just fuel for her audience to continue to harass the other person because they never knew that the conflict got resolved behind the scenes, essentially. Additionally, with her handling public conflicts privately, it gives her the power over the other person by not acknowledging them when they do reach out to her, as seen with the situation later with cruelworldhappymind. The only reason she posted that she apologized to Devin publicly is because the consequences of her actions were very swift and dire, and she was getting dragged completely through the mud. Basically, if you're going to shit talk publicly, you should be able to own up to it publicly too. The second thing Blair addresses in her video is the plagiarism claim, which I went pretty detailed earlier, especially why her apology for it in this section of her video was actually rather crap. What makes it even worse, in my opinion, is her opening comments in regards to this section, in which she essentially just attempts to mansplain what referencing and quoting is, and even going as far as to put up various definitions of what plagiarism is on screen.
Before I get into the accusation itself, I want to address the topic of plagiarism. And that word has been tossed around a ton, and it's not something to be taken lightly. And I just want to take a minute to define this word. On screen are definitions for the word plagiarism as defined by Merriam-Webster, Dictionary.com, and the University of Oxford. I'm showing multiple sources defining plagiarism, but the overall definition is going to boil down to this. Plagiarism is to take someone else's idea as their own or to not credit the source.
I'm not really going to restate what I said earlier, but her excuses are just that. Excuses. She's covering her own ass or the ass of her scriptwriter for her video. Before addressing the individual complaints from the SadMilk channel, Blair uses the next bit of her video to go more into the back end of the channel with her as the acting manager for it. She voices that she didn't do it just to be controlling or anything like that, but rather that it was something that she needed to do and needed to be done for the channel. The way she phrases it makes it appear as if she believes that she had no choice but to become the manager of the channel.
There's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes into a YouTube channel, and I bore the brunt of it for this project. And it wasn't something that I was doing to have total control, as some members have suggested. I managed the schedules and the editors because it was just something that needed to be done. People weren't stepping up to the plate, and I did, and I ultimately bit off more than I could chew. It was a lot of work, if we're being honest, and I was beginning to burn out pretty quickly. Had I known how I would have been treated through this channel and afterwards, I never would have joined this project.
Which leads me to question, if she really talked it out with the other members of the group to help separate the duties, because from recounts from OzMedia stating that she would completely lash out whenever people tried to help her. In fact, in hindsight, with everything going on in this situation, with all of the stories coming out with former members of the channel, it almost makes me believe that maybe Blair didn't really even discuss making the collaboration channel with everybody, but she just made it and then they joined, but that's neither here or there, I guess. Blair also goes into talking about the financial issues the channel was facing, with the initial agreement being that each of the members of the group would contribute their own portion for the editors, which let me be kind of a dick here for a second, because she goes kind of in depth with like some members could not contribute to the editor fees or just missed payments for whatever reason. But it sounds like SadMilk as a channel was not profitable enough to warrant the use of paid editors.
Ultimately, the channel made very little, and it actually cost a lot more than we earned a majority of the time.
She explains with this section that while the other members weren't paying, she would put in the missing money on her own to cover the expenses on their behalf, even though she didn't want to. Maybe it's because, like, I'm a one-person show running a personal channel, but I don't understand why someone who cites coming from the background of accounting would put in funds for something that evidently wasn't paying what it needed in order to fund the team. Like, why did you need, like, this huge team? As she begins to get more into the individual claims by the SadMilk members, she starts off by trying to defend herself from the outburst she had, equating to "shut up and let me talk" or something along similar veins. She had voiced that she had become frustrated while being talked over during a meeting with other members of the group. That frustration apparently stemmed from her feeling forced into the meeting, even though she didn't want to attend it.
In the meeting that he vaguely references on Twitter, this is what actually happened. I had become more and more frustrated about how I was doing all of the work, I was doing all of the maintenance, and then I was also having to financially foot the bill to the project. As I said, it was burning me out pretty quickly, and I was thinking about leaving the group. OzMedia suggested that he try to run the meeting and I not attend, and I agreed. But OneTopic and Click were very insistent that I be there, even though I said I was not ready to talk and I needed more time. So when I entered the call, I tried to let everyone know that I was uncomfortable with having this conversation and I was not ready to have it. Again, I would like to point out that at this point in time, these were still my friends. These were people that I liked and cared about. Letting your friends know, hey, I'm not okay right now, I'm really stressed and hurt, while you all get to stream, I still have to pick up the pieces to keep this channel going, is a really difficult conversation to have. Before the meeting started, I was told that if I didn't show up, that they would not have the conversation with me and everything would just stagnate. So I tried to put the channel and my friends' needs above my own. Reluctantly, I joined the conversation, and as I was speaking, OneTopic talked over me, and out of frustration of this happening yet again, I raised my voice and said, "Can you shut up and let me talk for once?"
But there lies, like, an issue in itself, like, from her claim, like, this side of the story at least, that she just doesn't really clarify what the meeting was about. Given the context of her previous statements, one could infer the meeting was maybe about her being overworked, paying the extra expenses for the channel because the others weren't, the inconsistencies with the other members' participation, but if any of those things were the issue, the meeting was going to be about whether she felt uncomfortable or not. As the self-appointed manager of the team, she would need to be within that meeting in order to voice her concerns and offer solutions to the issues. If she was going to go on and take on and enforce a position as a boss to her friends, she would need to be there for the discussion related to those things in which she had issues with. Technically, she could have requested the meeting be postponed until she was in a better mental state, sure, whatever, but that is something that should have been addressed if it wasn't to begin with. From her statements here, her outburst wasn't her fault because Click and OneTopic pressured or forced her into the meeting or whatever that she didn't want to attend, which sounds like this continual issue with Blair and her communication skills. Following addressing SadMilk's managerial issues as a whole, Blair gets into starting to talk about claims made against her by the former members individually, starting with Click. Like I stated before, she follows a similar line that many influencers do when addressing controversy, and that is to ignore the things that she doesn't believe have any proof one way or another, and to address things she thinks she has proof against. She first addresses Click mentioning that Blair would bring up very old videos of him to paint him in a negative light.
To be perfectly clear here, those videos are not any of the reasons as to why we split ways in SadMilk, as Click tries to insinuate.
Blair denies that these old videos were brought to light after Click had left the group, and how it was common knowledge that he had used the R slur casually.
A very convenient series of videos resurfaced with him saying some not-so-savory things after he left SadMilk. I was actually unaware of those videos at the time of our friendship, but had I been aware of them, that friendship would have likely ended sooner. When those videos surfaced, it wasn't really all that shocking to me, as OzMedia and I had actually talked about how Click had been using the R slur while we played games together.
In one screenshot she supplies, OzMedia is seen stating that Click's first language, not being English, wasn't an excuse for the use of the word since the R slur was frowned upon in Sweden even in the early 2000s. Which I know OzMedia had stated in his own Twitter thread that he acted as a yes man to Blair frequently, but is he from Sweden too? How would he know what word was frowned upon in the early 2000s in a country that he's not from? The word was frequently used here in America, actually, in TV shows, movies, music, and just the general lexicon of the American people well into the 2010s. Hell, I have doctors and teachers who use that word in professional settings all the way until like maybe 2014 or even later. As hard as it is to believe, the general consensus around that word being considered a slur outside of the sphere of like the disabled community is actually a lot more recent than the internet would lead you to believe. That doesn't make the use of the word any more alright than any other slur, but acting like it was a damnable offense when mainstream media was still insisting it is okay, it's a little ridiculous considering the language difference and cultural differences between Click and his American friends. And for the record, as someone severely neurodivergent, like, I'm glad it's considered a slur now, because my god, did I get sick of being called that all the time, but still. What matters is that Click has stated that he learned from his mistakes and is not going to use that word anymore. Unless the point of all this was to state that he continues to use this word to this very day. She says that he was still using horrific language until 2020 when SadMilk fell apart, which, citation needed? Evidence would be nice? But don't worry, while Blair only had some third-party screenshots of people talking behind Click's back, we'll return to this in Click's video. The next point she makes against Click is in response to his claim that she was trying to upstart his Discord server due to it gaining more popularity than her own. She begins her claims against Click by mentioning that his YouTube channel was previously terminated and how she, along with the help of other SadMilk members, helped to get it back, stating she regrets ever helping him get his channel back.
I do think it's relevant to bring up that in 2019, the Click's channel was terminated by YouTube for sexual content. At the time, a few YouTubers, including myself and OzMedia, band together to help reinstate Click's channel.
And then she makes one of the most damnable claims anybody could have lobbied against them, that Click endorses pedophilia.
I really wouldn't lightly make accusations like this unless I had seen them for myself. And let me be abundantly clear here, I am not trying to accuse the Click of pedophilia, nor do I have any reason to believe that he could be a pedophile. However, he cultivated an environment that was a breeding ground for inappropriate behavior with minors to occur, and that's exactly what happened.
And it's at this point, upon my first time watching the video, before I was like strictly like psychoanalyzing and all that shit, that I knew everything was about to go off the rails and any accountability Blair was trying to have for her own actions was well and truly done. The claim goes that there was a 19-year-old within Click's server being gross and talking about a 13-year-old. Blair states that Click did nothing to remove this person from his server, and like some screenshots that she kind of spread around or whatever that was uncovered, yada yada, would state that it was going on for months. And she had to get involved herself to fix the situation. Specifically, she mentioned removing the person from her own server and the SadMilk collab server, as well as reporting the person to Discord. Which, let me insert this clip here from Wonder that we're all thinking.
A personal question I would like to ask. If Blair had the information and documented evidence on a Discord server that, as she depicted, cultivated files, and truly believe this, why did she wait 3 years to come forward? Why did she allow the Click on SadMilk or play games with him in the free time? Why did she put a link for help for anyone affected by such actions of child grooming, yet didn't use her platform to speak up on a server and creator that is active to this day? If she were to argue a fear of retaliation, what is the reason? She makes content bringing light to the horrors of companies pretty much every week. Arguably, if she knew this was ongoing, knew the extent, and then said nothing, she would have arguably by proxy been responsible for any further victims in such a server.
She also mentions things about an admin sharing porn within the server, even though there were minors within the server, which actually makes things like look a little murky in my opinion when she continues telling the story, as she fails to differentiate stories about this 19-year-old versus this mod, which maybe it's because of the fact that we later learn that she tends to crop and chop screenshots to form whatever story she wants to form. She goes on to say that since Click was not taking care of the problem, nor were any of his mods, she had to get OneTopic involved, and they ended up having a private phone call between them to discuss the issue. What exactly was discussed in depth in this call between Blair and OneTopic essentially boils down to like he said, she said, because neither have like stated or released a recording of this phone call. She also shows that she had a call between herself, Click, and OneTopic. In one of these situations, not really clarifying if it was like the 19-year-old creep or the mod that was sending porn to people, her screenshots do not include a timestamp in which this call took place, only the date, which will be of interest in Click's response video. Blair's attempts to end this section dealing with the Click with this wish that he would learn from his mistakes and is paying more attention to his Discord fanbase, but those hope you improve wishes seem pretty lackluster after finishing the spiel with some pretty firm, "I regret ever knowing you," thrown about.
Click, I hope you have learned to not tolerate such behavior in your server. I hope that you have learned from this and that you'll continue to strive to do better. I truly regret ever being friends with you. And I hope that I can finally close the door on that chapter in my life. I want nothing to do with you, and I can only hope that I will no longer be associated with you after all of this.
CB2 also went into Illuminaughti's Discord and found creepy and comments in Illuminaughti's Discord when she tried to expose Click for having creepy content in his Discord.
Meanwhile, this individual is asking Charlie, the 15-year-old, to call him daddy and asking, "How far will you go?" Charlie refuses, and the individual blocks him in an effort to force him to call.
So CB2 messages Blair to try and make her aware of this.
I was just banned from your server. I was asking a mod to report behavior for one of your Patreon members in the Discord server, and whoever it was decided to ban me. I have evidence and I would like to share if at all possible. This isn't drama, this isn't for attention, I'm just trying to report this behavior, which I get no response.
And instead, the mods in the server make a public announcement saying, basically, anyone trying to create drama or gather evidence against Blair will be perma-banned. And
Next on Blair's chopping block was Wonder, which goes rather horribly in my opinion, as well as like the general opinion of everybody that watched this video. As we will all see later within OzMedia's update video, Blair has a habit of brutal abuse towards those that actively live with her, and is to note that this section about Wonder is the longest in her video, taking up almost half of the runtime. Her beginning section of Wonder states that his accusations are really hard to address due to so much of them being anecdotal with, like, you know, no screenshot evidence, that kind of stuff. Which basically means neither of us can prove or disprove these claims, so I'm going to tell you I'm right and he's wrong. Which is another thing that becomes rather interesting when we move on to Wonder's response video. The first claim by Wonder that Blair tries to debunk is the accusation of wage theft, which is the shortest way to summarize. She makes the excuse of, well, I didn't tell him to do this. Like, I don't have any editors, if that wasn't obvious. I already mentioned, like, I'm a one-man show here, so I can almost barely empathize with not wanting to pay someone for something they weren't instructed to do. But regardless of that, the work was done for the channel, and he was an employee of said channel and deserves to be compensated for his time, even if this was time spent fixing someone else's mistake without being prompted to do so. Honestly, he should have actually gotten a bonus or something for taking the initiative to help make the video the best it could possibly be, even without being asked, because it shows a real level of love and passion for his work. But that's just my opinion. After getting the excuse out of the way, Blair explains that SadMilk members were paid on a bi-weekly schedule, every 2 weeks, which would account for Wonder's complaint that he had to wait half a month to get paid for his work. Next in Wonder's section, Blair paints herself as a savior for saying that Wonder was depressed about his current living situation in Texas, and that eventually he moved in with her in OzMedia's house, and she proceeded to hire Wonder to be an editor for her individual channel so that he would have a job in a new state that he was living in. Which I would like to point out, the issue with this, living with your literal boss is never a good idea, like, unless you are married and, like, started the business together, I guess, but even that can have some, like, extreme power dynamic issues, but it's not a great idea because if you have any bad falling out with your employer, not only are you out of income, but you're also out of your house, which ultimately is what ended up happening to Wonder. Blair ended up firing Wonder as an editor, claiming he was being inappropriate in professional settings and just wasn't meeting deadlines, painting him to be a completely lazy employee. She also makes a weird complaint about Wonder not taking advantage of the benefits that she offered him as an employer, which I think is dumb, because if he doesn't want to use her benefits, that's his problem and not her business. especially when she notes how other employees of hers were using the funds from her reimbursement program, something I think that she could have been using just to monitor what her employees were doing with their lives, and the fact that she wasn't able to monitor Wonder's actions away from her probably really pissed her off.
The LSA stands for a lifestyle spending account, and it's essentially more money to put on the table if you as an employee want it. It allows you to submit receipts for things that you've purchased, and I've seen things like groceries, pet supplies, books, new tires for cars, massages, mortgage payments, and so much more.
In this section labeled Legalities, Blair repeats this pattern of making herself like the victim in a scenario by basically saying she was a great friend who did all of this stuff for Wonder, but it was one of the stupidest mistakes of my life.
Now, let's move on to the legalities that Wonder brought up in regards to how he claims that he ended up with no car, barely any clothing, no money, and no home. Which leads me to one of the stupidest mistakes of my life.
This section is where Blair outlines the deal she had made with Wonder about getting him a new car, showing documents detailing the funding she and Oz had put into the car and the monthly payment she was charging Wonder to lease the car from her. She emphasized that she was giving Wonder a deal on this car as it would be worth more than she was really charging him.
On June 12, 2021, OzMedia and I collectively decided to take out a loan together in the amount of $42,359.69. Additionally, I brought $28,346.79 in cash as a deposit. Wonder did not contribute to the deposit on the car. With this rent-to-own contract, I agreed to only charge Wonder the cost of the loan and not the full value of the car itself, meaning within a 24-month period, he would have only paid $14,120.12 for a car that, when purchased, went for a grand total of $61,386.23.
She also shows a quote-unquote legal document she had Wonder sign detailing their contract dealing with the car. However, some people have pointed out how unlikely this is to be actually any way legally binding within their state. But I'm not on the Eagle team, so I'm not going to be getting into the legalities of how binding a piece of paper you sign can be. While explaining how good of a deal her car leasing agreement was, she flashes a DM between herself and Wonder on the screen discussing the second half of the DM, which details Wonder being upset, saying that if he hadn't taken the job and car, he would still have a place to live, his own car, and a decent amount of savings. I feel this DM could have used a lot more context beyond just the documentation revolving the car, as the beginning half of the DM goes completely ignored as he is venting his frustrations for Blair using him as a scapegoat and accusing him of being a mole feeding information to the commentary channels. The second half of this DM could have been more focused on Wonder informing Blair that if he hadn't moved out to live with her as a live-in employee, that he would still have somewhere to live back in Texas, where he was from. But since he had moved to a new state and was more reliant on her and OzMedia, they had obviously uprooted his entire life, thusly, when she fired him, taking back his car and his need to move out rather suddenly would have put a major dent, if not drained his savings completely. Blair even takes this moment, with the DM on screen, to bring up OzMedia in a veiled attempt to push blame onto him with, unless he was charging Wonder rent without my knowledge, before going on to deny how she can't fathom how Wonder could lose his 10K savings, stating that she was actually the stupid one in this situation for losing $47,000 due to the car leasing arrangement. Which, to throw back at her, I can't fathom how it's Wonder's fault that you bought him a car and didn't charge him the amount the car was worth. She says she feels foolish for ever agreeing to the arrangement and how that led to her losing so much money, but again, wasn't she the one who made the arrangement? You didn't just agree to it, you were also the one who set up the deal. You don't regret agreeing to the deal and then losing money on it. No, you regret that Wonder didn't remain under your control through the deal. Following this is when Blair gets into the reasons why she had the car repossessed from Wonder, the dubiously, maybe not actually legal document they had signed together. After Wonder's falling out with Blair and leaving OzMedia's house, he was living inside the car, effectively homeless. Blair flashes the stipulations for Wonder using the car on screen again, which reading it over has a pretty big red flag for me, and one of the reasons Blair cites as to why she had the car repoed.
There were two outstanding instances that voided our agreement and constituted the repossession of my vehicle. The first was the proof of insurance that Wonder never provided. Insurance that is something federally required of any vehicle on the road in the United States. The second infraction on our agreement occurred when Wonderstruck left the state of Colorado to go back to Austin, Texas. You can clearly see these stipulations in the document on the screen right now. Due to multiple defaults by Wonder in our contract, I felt that I had no choice but to repossess the vehicle, which was my property because I am the one who owned it.
While it is understandable to be upset that Wander allegedly didn't have insurance, something that he actually counters later, the big red flag in this contract is stating that the car had to remain within the county in Colorado that presumably Blair and OzMedia lived. That is all, of course, if you were like interpreting it as literally as I'm interpreting it, in which like the car literally can't leave that county, and not just that Wander's home address can't be outside that county, right? But basically, if counties in Colorado are anywhere near similar sizings to the ones in the state that I live in, this stipulation effectively trapped Wander within like anywhere like a half hour to maybe like a little over an hour radius. Where I live, I can literally drive 10 minutes and be in a new county, so having the restriction be that narrow is honestly unfathomable to me. Blair says that Wander took the car back to his hometown, and that was ultimately why she decided to repo the car, which again, I think that as long as Wander was maintaining the payments to the lease agreement, it shouldn't have mattered where he drove off to. By trapping him in one county within a larger state, Blair was effectively restricting Wander from doing the basic things like visiting family, friends, exploring new cost-effective places to live, and even his ability to get new jobs. You know, cutting off his support network and making him more reliant on her. This stipulation is glaringly abusive, again if you're interpreting it as literally as I am. She wanted to trap him with her. In the beginning of this section, she said there were like 2 infractions on her contract, and then like later states that there was multiple, making it seems like there was like more than 2 that she mentioned in the beginning, expert wording, you know, to make things out to be way worse than what it is. But again, through this, she never once stated that Wander defaulted or forgot to make a payment on the car. When Blair had learned that the car was no longer within her county in Colorado, which is why I'm, really interpreting this like super literally, she went to Texas and took the car back, saying that she called the police, non-emergency, to get the car back.
When I landed in Austin, Texas, I called the non-emergency Austin PD 311 number to explain the situation to them. I told them that I had all of my title documents on me, I had the extra key, I had my insurance cards for the vehicle, and I asked them how I should proceed. They told me they were unconcerned as I was well within my legal right to collect my own property. They furthermore offered me a police escort for the repossession if I wasn't able to collect the car on my own. So on July 29th, 2021, I was able to get a hold of my vehicle and I took back my property.
But the way that she describes the call makes me believe that she didn't really detail this lease agreement to own thing. I imagine it was more like she called and said someone had her car and she needed to get back, thus the offer for an escort to get it. And just honestly, with my experience with dealing with fucking cops and watching like a lot of crime TV, if there's one thing abundantly clear to anybody in America is don't take legal advice from cops. Seriously, just don't do it. They don't actually know the law. They enforce what they think the law is and then just let lawyers handle the rest. Was Blair actually within her legal right to repo the car? Considering the speculation on the legality of the document that she keeps flashing up on screen, I doubt it. But again, I'm not a lawyer, but regardless of legality, it was still a dick move. Especially when she goes on to detail how much of a mess this car was, with like a couple of bottles on the floor and like a sock and some clothes in the back seat. Wait, whoops, hold on. That's a picture of Blair's room, not the car.
I would like to take a moment to bring up the condition of the vehicle upon its repossession. Within 1 month of using the vehicle, the car was visibly soiled, trash was littered in the car, it contained dirty clothing which consisted of I think 2 pairs of dirty boxers and maybe 3 mismatched socks. There was also a huge crack that went across most of the windshield, and for some reason the glove box compartment in the front passenger seat was somehow broken. The state of the vehicle was shocking, to be honest, but at this point I was just happy to have my car back and know that it couldn't be damaged any further.
But yeah, if she thinks that this is a mess, she'd completely have an aneurysm looking at my truck. No, I'm not going to show you the inside of my truck, trust me. There is just dog hair everywhere, and that bag of rock salt spilled in the bed years ago, and I'm not climbing in there to vacuum that out. She also makes this complaint about a huge crack in the windshield, which is noted was caused by a stone that flew out from a semi-truck's tire or whatever in Wonder's response video. Listen, I laughed at this because my spouse replaces car glass for a living and has in fact won many awards for doing so. I love him. That crack is not that bad. Listen, my spouse has shown me some fucked up windows, and that huge crack that she shows on screen is just so pathetic it's laughable. It's just laughable that she's demonizing it in the way that she is. Yes, I'm aware. Any crack or defect within car glass can and will eventually get worse with time due to pressure and temperature, but seriously, do you really call this huge? Do you call Tic Tacs huge too? Hey, I got a mansion I want to lease to you, Blair. Sorry, I just needed some levity here because the fact that she even repoed this car makes me so fucking mad. She says the state of the vehicle was shocking, and I just sigh in rust-covered pickup truck. But anyway, the way she continues to exaggerate how horribly Wander destroyed this car just makes me roll my eyes because her words are just not matching the photos that she's showing on the screen to me. But hey, maybe somebody who doesn't drive a 15-year-old gas guzzler would need to clutch their pearls over these photos. The glove box, an easy fix. The windshield, not that bad, especially if you get the window replaced before it gets any worse. The bottles can be picked up, the clothes can be laundered, the floor can be swept. Honestly, all the inside debris would take literally like 10 minutes to clean at a car wash or, in your driveway or whatever. For someone who was essentially living inside the car, that car is incredibly clean given those circumstances. As for the, in my opinion, minor damages, didn't that so-called legally binding contract you had Wonder sign say that he had to handle any of the damages to the car? Did you charge him for those damages, like the glove box or the windshield? Did you even give him the opportunity to go fix those problems? No. At the end of this car section, and later in the video, I find it really curious how she's talking nicely about OzMedia, citing that she is thankful for him and later goes on tearfully about missing him, which is weird considering the most recent developments as of scripting this video. Blair is suing OzMedia for his whole ass house because he spoke out against her in a Twitter thread, and allegedly because she found out that he was making a video about her. Going back to detailing things related to Wonder because she had the most to say about him. My god, like I said, it's like over half her fucking video time. Blair jumped into the next section, which was about Wonder's mental health, which was a big fucking yikes, man. I'm not going to go into like the big details regarding Wander's struggles with his mental health because he does so within his own videos, and at the end of the day, when you're discussing struggles about your mental health, the words coming out of your own mouth are the best source for that information. I just find it so nauseating that Wander clearly expresses that Blair's mistreatment of him was a contributing factor to the situation that he found himself in. Remember, he uprooted his whole life of stability for something that she offered him, and then she took it all away when it would devastate him the most. And she goes on to ignore the lines in his message about how she was using him as an emotional punching bag and not communicating with him in his eyes just for a reason to be mad at him later. Her flashing this message on screen honestly is not doing her any good at all. And again, lack of reading comprehension skills, she doesn't even talk about this screenshot correctly anyway. And really, considering she ends the mental health section shortly after airing out Wonder's issues with just, we shouldn't have had the same therapist, it makes me question why she would have even bothered to include this part in the video beyond she's just bad at reading, right? The message she puts on screen did not help her any way, and by discussing it in this savior complex way of I tried to get him a wellness check was just her way of trying to justify showing this sensitive information. Wonder's mental health struggles should never have been a point in her video, especially considering the entire point of this entire video is her attempt at a gotcha moment against her detractors. Wonder having mental health problems is not any point that needs to be disputed or debated. It is extremely upsetting knowing how badly Blair ruined Wonder's life because it reminds me so heavily of an abuser in my own life. God damn it. Blair went out of her way to take everything away from Wonder when she no longer found him useful, presumably because he actively stood up against her controlling nature. Wonder did the right thing when he answered the call from his therapist. He did the right thing by getting away from Blair, and he continues to do the right thing by bettering himself despite the trauma that Blair inflicted upon him. And he will continue to do the right thing by thriving without her, and as far as his mental health is concerned, I'm rooting for him every healing step of the way. The next section dealing with Wonder is about his dog named James. To which, all I have to say is, why? Why is this something you're even bringing up? Did Wonder or anyone else from SadMilk mention dogs Did I miss that somewhere within the dozens of tweets from this situation? Because honestly, there was a lot of tweets and stuff from this situation, so I guess it's possible I missed it. But what does you guys being shit at dog behavior have anything to do with you being a bad boss or a manipulative friend? What does your dog and Wonder's dog not getting along have anything to do with the alleged false accusations lobbied against you, when the dogs were never brought up to my immediate knowledge? Let me know in the comments if someone actually did bring up the dogs, please. The issue with the dogs seems so fucking dumb to me, I don't want to bother looking. Speed running this as much as I can. Most dog trainers nowadays will tell you that dog parts are actually the literal devil and are not in any way neutral grounds for dogs to meet. Introductions need to be very slow, like weeks of separation and sniffing before letting them be kept together depending on the dog's temperament, right? If they aren't getting along, you should not force them because that's literally just going to lead to more fighting. Every dog is different and outcomes can vary very drastically, especially to untrained individuals, because it just kind of seems really unpredictable if you don't know the signs to look out for. But again, who the fuck brought up the dogs to start with? Wonder's a bad dog owner. Well, no other context beyond Blair bringing this up just makes it seem like another character assassination attempt to me. Is this an attempt to just generally counter the points of you being a bad housemate? Maybe? The theory of bringing up the dogs as a way to discredit Wonder seems likely, as this is when Blair also kind of segue into discussing the photo of the messy room within her house, which, oh boy, do I got some words about this. She adamantly denies that this room was always like this, stating that it was actually a room just for unpacking when they moved in, or for Amazon boxes or whatever, right? And Wonder violated her trust and OzMedia's trust by going into this room and taking the picture because she made it clear that he wasn't allowed in that room ever.
As for the photo that Wonder posted claiming that I live in a hoarder home, I want to clarify that, as previously stated, Oz and I had only started moving into the home around mid-April 2021. I still had my room from a shared lease with multiple roommates until June 1st. During Wonder's stay, I was still in the process of moving in and unpacking. Furthermore, the photo he shows is a photo of a room that wasn't lived in by anyone in the house, and it was being used as a temporary storage and unpacking site while everyone was moving in. The out-of-context photos of the house being moved into are being used as a way to show that I'm a supposed monster and that, quote, my home is a mess, like hoarders bad. And just, what was the point of this, Wonder? Why would you even bother posting something like this except to humiliate me? This was a room that we told you we were using to move, and we let you know it was off limits to you. That photo alone shows your consistent lack of respect for Oz's and my boundaries.
Now, in hindsight, with Wonder's response video, I love this because it shows Blair's willingness to just outright lie in order to make someone seem worse than she is. Because Wonder did not take this picture. That picture was actually sent to him by OzMedia, along with several other pictures of the rest of the house in a very disheveled state.
Because I didn't take these photos, Oz did, and I held back out of respect for my friend.
With Oz explaining that Blair refused to clean up after herself. Specifically, these photos were taken and sent after Wonder had moved out of the house, with OzMedia clarifying that the mattress on the floor, in the most infamous photo of the bunch, was not even purchased until almost a whole year after Wonder had left. Which I'm just wondering why she even made up this entire grandiose story and excuse for this picture, right? And trying to excuse the way it looked and yada yada. She could have very well used this photo as an example of her own mental health struggles, because being unable to clean is a legit thing people struggle with in the throes of depression and other conditions. Hell, I struggle really to maintain the bare minimum so my dishes don't go moldy, so I know from firsthand experience just how real executive dysfunction can be and how hard it is to fight through that debilitating fog to clean. But instead of just saying that she struggled to clean or anything of that nature, she lied about the photo and made it look even worse when the photo was placed within the collage of the other photos of the house, knowing that she lied about it. Now, if we're going to put on my non-professional tinfoil hat on here, I can give a theory on why Blair chose not to use her mental health as a way to explain this mess. The theory is that Blair sees mental health struggles as weakness, and thus as something to weaponize against the person struggling, hence why she would put Wonder's message on blast to make herself out to be the savior in the situation, and additionally we'll also see later that she adamantly made fun of Tipster's mental health, but we'll get there.
As many of you know, I am a longtime sufferer of anxiety and depression. It's an ongoing struggle that I often deal with.
I don't.
And one of my main outlets for dealing with it is YouTube. I love making videos and hosting live streams for my audience. It's become my primary escape when overcoming the struggles of life.
If she were to admit her own faults, I think that she would kind of believe that others would use them to make her feel worse about herself than she already did, right? In the end, I don't think she expected OzMedia to run to Wonder's defense, mainly because she was most likely aware that OzMedia had been the one to send those photos to begin with. Now, I do have a little tiny issue with the narrative that Wonder has tried to plant here of Blair living like an actual monster, because it is definitely a common stigma to villainize people who are messy, when often a mess like that is due to the beforehand mental health issues, right? Or even physical health issues. But it's also understandable that in the height of emotions when discussing people who have obviously traumatized you, that you probably don't want to use the nicest words to describe someone, right? Blair goes on to say that Wonder had no reason to post the photo unless it was to humiliate her, which I think is a fair assessment with his language of her being a monster for being a mess, but I can also counter that with there was no point in bringing up the dogs unless it was to humiliate Wonder, or his mental health struggles. As they say, there's two sides to every coin here.
And Wonder, I am sorry that I was ever friends with you. My short involvement in your life clearly caused you so much harm and emotional distress, and I never want that for any of my friends, past or present. And for that, I again want to apologize. I hope you find peace.
After the huge section dedicated to Wonder, which I do mean it was fucking huge, Blair finally addresses OzMedia, her other roommate, former boyfriend, in the final area of the video. OneTopic apparently escaped unscathed from all of this, so cool for him, I guess. A curious thing to note in relation to OzMedia, from, like, the entire duration of, like, Wonder's giant section of the video, is that Blair would lump OzMedia together with herself, even when it wasn't necessary at all.
And Oz, I want to thank you again for helping me throughout this entire situation. You knew better than anyone how much this situation affected the both of us, and I can't express how much your support meant and continues to mean to me.
Saying things like calling the house hers and Oz's, saying that Wander violated hers and Oz's boundaries while living together, etc. Blair spoke for Oz quite a lot during this video, and it reminds me of how Oz had admitted to being, like, the yes man running to Blair's defense about stuff. And like I said, as it turns out, revealed in Oz's video regarding Blair's legal battle against him, he was dating Blair during the duration of all the issues revolving, like, the downfall of SadMilk and living with Wander and everything. It's the knowledge that they were dating that definitely gives off this weird sense of codependency, especially with Blair unable to separate her problems from Oz when she was having issues with Wander as a roommate and employee. Seeing how much she is still lumping Oz into her troubles with, like, speaking for him makes it even more hard to swallow, seeing just how hard she's hitting Oz in terms of the legal threats and actions and the effort to silence him. But again, she's trying to take his whole fucking house. Blair's section about OzMedia is choked through tears, clear that despite her defense of them, she wasn't really expecting Oz to join the train of accusations against her.
The truth is, like we've privately discussed before, I always hoped that we'd be able to reconnect again in the future and mend our friendship. I meant that when I said it to you, and I believed you when you said it back. Even after everything that's happened, you were the one person that I always thought we could just get it and pick back up where we left. And unfortunately, I think that ship has sailed. Oz, I miss the friend you were to me, but I think this makes it clear that we finally need to cut all ties.
Now, could this be because of any, like, legitimate leftover feelings for Oz, or for the fact that, you know, she made him sign that bogus contract? So she brings up how Oz was obviously there for her through a ton of personal things because, you know, they were dating. Things that she details, but as sad as the situations were that she, like, describes, they have literally nothing to do with all of these accusations made against her and felt really out of place within the, like, confines of, like, an addressing everything type video. She ends Oz's incredibly short section by saying that she was hoping that they could mend their friendship, but now sees that they just need to cut ties with one another, which again is incredibly hurtful due to how she is, like, now actively harassing him through legal intimidation. And I think Oz also mentioned that she's, like, been sending him phone calls and, like, voice memos, text messages, that kind of stuff. Blair ends her entire video with the conclusion that she is taking accountability for her actions, totally, and admitting that she acts out impulsively and just needs to work on that. But even if you just watch this final conclusion and nothing else within this video, she bounces blame away from herself and instantly negates the claim that she needs to hold herself responsible by saying she was associating herself with a bad group of people and making bad friends, etc.
I want to take responsibility for my own involvement with a crowd I am happy to no longer associate with. I did make bad decisions, I've made bad friends, and there will forever be a bad taste in my mouth regarding some of the individuals I've spoken about today.
Which immediately just points the finger at everybody else and saying, I acted this way because of who I was around, not because of who I am. We're trying to counter the point she thought she could make through this video. It's easy to see that Blair would do what she can in order to not take accountability, or at the very least, from this conclusion, she thinks taking accountability involves not being around people she deems as bad because clearly she can't control her own actions. She ends the video with an apology to her audience, saying that they deserve better, yada yada, than what she's given them, and she hopes that she can prove that she means all of these things she said in her video to them, which is strange because she did not really apologize for literally anything within the video. And I do mean literally anything, because I don't really count what she said about Legal Eagle in the beginning much of an apology either. Yeah, it's going to be easy for your audience to believe what you said in your video. All you did was kind of apologize to Devin for your lack of reading comprehension, which, like I said, I don't really think that was much of an apology. You didn't apologize to the editor you were really pissed off at. You mansplained what plagiarism really was when addressing that claim. Then you threw two people under the bus by accusing one of being chill with pedophiles, and basically outlined a variety of ways you tormented the other person. And then you ended the video by saying you missed the one person who did whatever you wanted. But hey, like I said, OneTopic escaped, so good for him, I guess. As one could expect from how badly Blair's response video went, the two people whom she tried her best to paint in the most awful light possible would want to try to come forward and clear their names from everything that she had brought up. But as much as they wanted or needed to respond to Blair's video in order to save their reputations and cope with the trauma Blair had inflicted on them, one of the response videos towards Blair was actually the one person who kept sliding under her radar, at least compared to the other involved parties. OneTopic's video focused the most on the experience as a collaborator on SadMilk, similarly to how his Twitter thread also did. He arguably had, the most to lose and the least to gain from making this YouTube video addressing everything dealing with the defunct channel and Blair, but it shows a real sense of loyalty and compassion in him as a person for being willing to put himself out there to defend the people where false narratives were being spread. The first real thing that OneTopic addresses in his video is how Blair fabricated the payment situation within the SadMilk channel. As you might recall from her video, she had claimed that she was fronting most of the finances for the SadMilk as the other members couldn't, or in her narrative, just wouldn't pay their fair share of the behind-the-scenes staff like editors. OneTopic cites that the conversation related to finances was odd, as the group had in-depth conversations about helping members who couldn't afford their fair share of the cost when those needs arose, and how everybody was in agreement to help those members.
That when issues arose, we talked them out as a group to find a solution, and then solved for it. So I'm unsure what the larger conversation around payments or payment issues is, as I'm unaware of it, and it wasn't a central theme to why things broke down.
Under this narrative, Blair complaining that she was handling the brunt of the financial situation within SadMilk was something she most likely had agreed to within these discussions, and she did not try to negotiate her end of the deal, or just, savior complex. She was willing to do it at the time. However, it is up to debate, to me at least, if she was even paying more out of pocket than everyone else, since we continue to see this pattern of behavior with her lying, omitting details, and then just plainly exaggerating things. Which, given that she wanted more money for quote-unquote doing more for the channel, it is plausible that she didn't mention her displeasure with funding, since that would take responsibility from her, and thus the purpose of her being paid more than the other members. It's also possible that if she was paying more, it could have been a control tactic towards the rest of the group, as a financial abuse is fairly common among manipulators and abusers. OneTopic also shares that the finances of the channel actually had little to do with why it had fallen apart, despite what Blair had tried to claim within her video. The second major thing that OneTopic addresses is the one-on-one call he had with Blair in regards to the inappropriate person within Click's Discord server. Rewinding to Blair's video, her narrative was that Click willingly let this person run amok within his server for a while and did nothing to try to stop him, and she herself had to take it upon herself to get OneTopic involved to get Click's attention to ban this person. And since this is a rebuttal video, OneTopic obviously says this is not at all how that situation went. While this is a case of he said, she said, like with the knowledge that would be apparent by now, we as an audience are left to gauge whose word is more trustworthy here. Blair's, who we have evidence for her tendency to lie or embellish situations, or OneTopic, who had done his best to just state things in a professional manner in regards to a collaboration channel that just didn't work out. And of course, we'll get more evidence like later about this entire debacle. OneTopic states the one-on-one call being about the inappropriate person, but was more focused on Blair asking if he thought Click would be okay with this person remaining in the server, given their behavior, which of course OneTopic told her of course not, no, and worked to comfort her as she appeared to be upset in the phone call. He even informed her that they should talk to Click about the situation, obviously, given that it is his Discord server, especially given the time zone difference would mean that Click was asleep while the issue within his server was even happening.
It made me uncomfortable to hear words or intentions put in my mouth regarding the group call whose framing in the video does not comport with reality. The retelling of how our group conversation went and using it as a way to frame the situation as Click not actioning soon enough or responding timely is simply a lie. The one-on-one call was more to check in on, do you think he would support this person's behavior? And I said no, but that we should really be talking to him directly about this. And I thought the best way to clear this up would be to just talk to him. It felt weird that we hadn't yet.
OneTopic also confirms that the person was banned and dealt with prior to discussing it with Click, prior to Click even being aware of the situation. And we even see later that the person was also banned prior to even Blair calling OneTopic and asking if Click would be okay with the person being in the server. So, yeah. During the group call between Click, Illuminaughtii, and OneTopic, Click goes on to make a plan to discuss things within his server mods in the event of a similar situation happening, presumably under the impression that they did not act fast enough due to Blair's narrative, which he also kind of backs up that maybe they could have acted faster. Despite the situation being dealt with, Blair wanted to share images with OneTopic so he could understand just how serious it was, which he denied wanting to see them. In Blair's video, she had painted this out to be as if the screenshots were just so horrific that OneTopic couldn't even stomach to look at them, not that OneTopic just didn't want to see them because the situation had already been handled.
I got into a call with both of them and I shared these files with them, and OneTopic opened the files, he was horrified, and he said, and I quote, "I've read one and I don't want access to those screenshots." It was after this conversation that Click took action and reported and removed that individual from his server.
Near the end of the call, Illuminaughtii stated that she wanted me to see the screenshots to fully understand the gravity of the situation, and I conveyed that since it was already shared between the two of them during the call, and the person was banned, and how Click was going to talk to his mods after this conversation, and with how everything was already discussed and solved, that I didn't need to see them, and I had no interest in them. I really didn't want to see the messages of a banned Discord person. A folder of them was dropped into the chat, and I was told it was important to look at them. So wanting to keep the waters calm, I opened the folder and I looked at one of the screenshots, and then I reiterated in written text what I'd already conveyed, which was that I had no interest in having access to the screenshots.
In fact, OneTopic paints the call in a pretty positive light, saying that it was mostly just to discuss the situation, check in with Click to make sure he was okay, and importantly, OneTopic says that he felt that everybody involved were still friends by the end of the call. In a screenshot OneTopic shares of a private conversation with Click, there's a section that says he was there for the call to make sure that Blair didn't take things to the worst possible conclusion.
I'm sorry all of that got dumped on you at once, dude. I agree Illumi can talk to you directly about this, obviously, and she woke me up a while ago with a lot of concerns, so I was just sticking around to make sure that she didn't take things to the worst conclusion.
I feel like this screenshot, it shows that both of them were already familiar with Blair's knack for taking things the wrong way and assuming the worst, which makes me question what kind of things Blair had done around them to make them so familiar with this character trait of hers. Unfortunately, it turned out that they were correct to be wary of Blair's involvement in this situation, as she would later use this situation to demonize them once they broke away from her control and away from the SadMilk collab channel. She had actively made it seem like Click was not only okay with pedophilia, but gave it a platform within his server by ignoring it. As others had pointed out, she had actively made tweets in regards to this issue of pedophilia after Click and OneTopic had left the SadMilk channel.
But it's the specific timing I would like to bring attention to. Here is SadMilk posting on the 1st of November, 3:28 AM, that theclick will not be continuing the new journey with SadMilk and we're leaving the channel. And here's a tweet from iilluminaughtii saying, casual reminder, pedophilia is never a gray area. It is wrong. If someone you know won't take action, then they are complicit to the problem, and so on and so forth, and here are some of the threads. In isolation, there is nothing wrong with this statement. It's one that I obviously support. However, the timing certainly struck us and the community as odd. Immediately after announcing her departure from SadMilk, within 3 hours, this statement was made by iilluminaughtii and retweeted by SadMilk. This, as anyone would know, started many rumors,
making it ambiguous if that was the reason either or both of them have left the group. Which again, it's not why either of them left the group, and to post that around the same time as their departure was actively malicious in an attempt to put the idea into the minds of hers and SadMilk's audience. Kind of like asshole inception. And it's made even worse when you realize that, like, when she was posting that kind of stuff, she was also having the SadMilk channel like her post about it, so... OneTopic also briefly touches upon the issue of mods, stating he didn't understand the issue being brought up about someone owning mods, as most of the mods were moderators in multiple servers.
But I'm still confused about the phrasing of who owned whose mods, and claiming Click's mods didn't do anything to ban a member if they both shared mods, because then the mods who did do the ban were also his mods, even if they're moderating elsewhere, because they're also moderating his Discord?
Which I do see how it would be weird to whine about mods being lazy and not enforcing rules if those same mods are also in charge of your own server, so there's that, I guess. The following section is about the final meeting for SadMilk that OneTopic was a part of, the one in which Blair began to yell at him to shut the fuck up, essentially.
Anyways, I didn't call a specific meeting. Click did express the importance of having one to clear the air about what we all found stressful and how to solve for it, something he and I had talked about, but we didn't call a meeting.
He seems really genuinely hurt recounting this call, to the point where he doesn't really go into much detail about it besides the fact that he left early, presumably due to the hostility. In the end, this call seemed to have helped make up his mind that participating in SadMilk was draining on his mental health, and he decided that he needed to leave the project.
It became clear during the meeting that me simply staying involved in the project was unhealthy for me, but also that my participation was seen as antagonistic. I don't know what she needed, but whatever it was, whatever kind of help it wasn't what a friend could give. And I don't think I was one at that point. And that sucked.
After leaving the group, it is to note that OneTopic cites that he did not want his departure from the channel to be like a big public fiasco, and neither did Click, as they both left a few days apart from one another.
I hadn't actually seen my departing message since making it. I wrote this and then left the server. Since it's been in others' videos, I'm just gonna read it out. Hey fam, I've had a quick chat with Oz, but I want to share with you the details. I've decided to step away from SadMilk. SadMilk is an excellent project, one that I've loved participating in and making friends through. I genuinely care for each of you, and it's hard to recognize when things are fundamentally not working despite trying to push through it. I have done my best to adapt myself, my voice, my presence, and my humor around what all of you will find works in a video. And I've done my absolute best to be the voice of reason when big things are changing or we need someone to prepare bad news, but the level of involvement I've had is not sustainable, and progressing further into it this way is continuing to be unhealthy for me, both publicly and privately. Currently, I will be stepping away from SadMilk. I don't have any public messaging planned, as any change, such as someone leaving, can make people feel like a project is on rocky footing, and I don't want my personal exit to be the cause of yet more drama. I love you all, and I need to do this for my sake. I love what we've done so far, and I know you can take this further. OT. That's... I've also asked Click, who left a day or so after I did, to please read his departing message for us.
Hey friends, I'm a slime all over y'all. I have taken this last week to think things through thoroughly, and realized during the past time, and especially during the Monday meeting, that a lot of priorities and ideas for SadMilk have shifted. It is always fun to see a project move forward and see your friends be invested and creative. However, I also feel like I was in the minority in the meeting, and that is perfectly okay. Everyone doesn't have to agree on everything or do the same things. All these changes, SadMilk is heading in a direction that I simply cannot follow at this time. You may have noticed on my other platforms that I have decreased my width and activity in many places, such as the podcast, my ASMR channel, I stream less, etc. I realized that my life was getting incredibly isolated, where I sometimes didn't see another human for 3 days in a row and didn't leave the house. Being the extrovert I am, this has started to affect my mental health negatively, and I need to drop some things to make life work. Hence, I can't ride with you on the current path SadMilk is on. I wish the best for the channel, and it has been a blast to do something like this with like-minded people. I do still consider everyone here close friends, and I look forward to talking with you guys in DMs or other servers. I don't plan on having a public announcement made, just let it fade out smoothly, with a new style of content that might actually happen naturally. Love you all deeply, and thank you for letting me partake in this project.
And OneTopic says that he had to warn his moderators to be on the lookout for any negativity that might arise out of him leaving the SadMilk group. Negativity that he didn't try to claim would come from Blair, but again, she did have that habit about posting rumors and other vitriol against those that she feels had wronged her in some way. Unfortunately, him warning moderators to be on the lookout for targeted comments, as he put it, only really works when it comes from areas of the internet that he kind of had control over, which is why Blair was still able to spread the narrative on Reddit that she did all of the work for the SadMilk channel, over 30 hours, and the other collaborators only really needed to record funny lines and nothing else. OneTopic expresses being upset, rightfully so, that Blair would downplay the amount of work he and the other members of the group did for the channel. As we have seen and will continue to see as everything progresses, Blair has to be in control, or else she will try everything in her power to make the person out of her grasp powerless.
Click was right that we didn't want to weigh in on things at the time, because speaking towards any of this was clearly seen as antagonistic or threatening, and we just wanted to give everyone the space to move on. But regardless of what we did or didn't do, rumors continued to spin. And it was so disappointing, especially when some of the rumors were furthered on Reddit from Illuminaughti's main account. Not only were these posts inaccurate, but they showed a dishonest oversimplification of the work we had done on this project.
Next, OneTopic addresses how Blair weaponized other people's mental health against them, specifically Wonders, with OneTopic's admission that the SadMilk channel frequently shared their personal struggles with one another and helped lift one another up. The fact that Blair would hold on to this information to put others down starts to show a more horrific side to her than we all originally thought. Like I said before, when discussing her response video, she views mental health as weakness to be exploited and weaponized.
One thing I never thought would be released was personal details about a group member's mental health or their struggles. I figured those kind of personal details would be off limits and no way would be used as a weapon.
It is through the group sharing their private mental health struggles with one another that it became apparent that someone within the group, I wonder who, we know it was Blair, was using alt accounts to spread rumors about the people who left SadMilk in order to humiliate them and destroy their reputations. OneTopic goes in to highlight some targeted hate that Blair committed through these alt accounts, even stating that it was to the degree in which he was afraid of his family being targeted as well due to Blair willingly dropping such private and personal information for the sake of perpetuating these hateful narratives that she wanted to spread.
I had to tell my family that they couldn't engage with my content out of concern that they might say something that would get them targeted too. I had to worry not just about who I made friends with, but who, by being friends with me, I put at risk.
He ends the video with a rather impassioned and hurt call out to Blair, wondering why she had to hurt so many people just because they had some differences, that she treated her friends badly for no reason other than the fact that she couldn't control them the way that she wanted.
I still don't want to believe all of this is true. I'm not convinced the person who did this did not intend real-world harm to us. The only kind of person who could slander their friends like this is someone who is darkly unremarkable. Blair, I don't know if you've made it this far, but I'm sorry. I truly am. I really wish we could have been the friends you were looking for, but we were still your friends. What you did was unacceptable and goes so far beyond any petty beefs or squabbles or hurt feelings. This wasn't just trying to separate yourself from us like we asked for and worked to do. You acted like this was a war and that you should be recruiting soldiers to come after us. You lied. And I can only think that's because you wanted us gone. Not just off of YouTube. You wanted these lies to come into our everyday life offline.
True to my interpretation from the beginning of this entire section, OneTopic really shows a sense of loyalty to his friends, even an ex-friend like Blair, by saying that he hopes that she can get the help that she needs, and that he hopes that she can better herself and bounce back from all this, as long as she can just accept that people have boundaries, and those boundaries don't mean that her friends hate her. The next video response I'm going to go over is Click's, as it was apparently the first in the bunch. I'm sorry for going out of order, but OneTopic's video was honestly the shortest. Until OzMedia's came out. Click alludes in the beginning of his response video that he did not want to make any videos, for he didn't really want to bring drama into his channel, but when you have all these allegations against you, you kind of have to, discuss it. He didn't state it outright, but you get the sense that he felt really backed into the corner into making this video due to those wild accusations that Blair made against him in her video. And I don't blame him for making a full-fledged video as opposed to a tweet or a community tab post in response to Blair, because the accusations that she made against him could very well be career-ending if enough people didn't see the rebuttal of these claims, especially the accusations revolving around pedophilia. Click actually mentions that he and the other former friends of Blair knew for a long while that she was the one leaking information and spreading rumors about them, but didn't have enough hard evidence to present to the general public at large to accuse her of doing so. But she ended up putting her foot in her mouth within her own video by regurgitating talking points and mannerisms of the rumors that she had initially spread.
My main grievance with Illuminati wasn't necessarily the behavior that made me leave. It's in the past, and she lost many friends over it. I think I can let that speak for itself. My main grievance was her insistence to create new rumors and slander about myself, OneTopic, and others after we left, and how she wouldn't leave us alone. This was super hard to address in any capacity, as she rarely made the accusations directly, always talking through someone else's mouth or hyping up some young impressionable fan or associate to the point they would try to expose me, or simply vague posting on Twitter with very suggestible timings. Very easy for me and my colleagues to tell where all this was coming from, but really hard to actually prove to an outside audience, therefore almost impossible to defend yourself against. The talking points she tried so hard to sneakily spread for the longest time are actually the exact same talking points she brought up in her video.
Obviously, the first thing that Click actually addresses within his video is the situation involving the pedophilia accusation, which is also obviously the most damnable accusation that Blair had made against him. And I just want to note here how much I hate how normalized it's become for people to just continuously throw out these kind of accusations against people. By constantly throwing out this kind of accusation with little to no proof, it's drastically watered down the severity of the claim, which in turn is making people who are the victims of pedophilia lose their voice within the crowd of people screaming and pointing fingers at anybody they can get views off of. Click doesn't beat around the bush at all when addressing this situation, simply stating that he was unaware of it happening due to him being asleep while the situation was progressing. He also disproves that his mods did nothing to stop the issue by showing that they had banned the individual only pretty soon after the problem arose, maybe 14 minutes or something like that, if I'm remembering the screenshots correctly.
In the allegations against me, it is claimed that I didn't react or respond to the situation. Number 1, being asleep at 2 a.m. detail was completely left out. 2, the fact that he was actually banned before this whole thing was left out. And 3, a receipt of Illuminati reaching out to me to get me to respond wasn't shown in her video or allegations. And the reason for this is that it doesn't exist. The person who reached out to resolve this was actually myself.
He goes on to detail that Blair had begun to make a huge deal and instigated chaos within his mod team several hours after the person was banned.
By the time I woke up, the staff spaces were in chaos. I assume she had asked her crossover staff to leave my server after the two teams clashed, fighting, tossing around odd allegations, and blame. Keep in mind, the creep that joined the VC was already banned for many hours. And this is what I saw when I woke up in the morning. Tons of messages in staff chats, arguments, white names from people leaving. I tried to get an explanation to what had happened, and it took me a good few hours to dig through everything, talk to people, try to de-escalate, and evaluate who had done wrong, and so on. The situation recap wasn't exactly presented to me on a silver platter.
And Click had to be the one to reach out to her in order to figure out what exactly had happened while he was sleeping. Through this conversation, Click was able to piece together and investigate that there was a delay in action within his moderation team and corrected the issue now that he was awake. Like OneTopic, Click states that at the end of the call with Blair, he felt they were still friends and had a very productive meeting. Despite feeling that the call went well, Click shows that Blair would take screenshots and use them to spread her own narratives of the situation. The one example he uses is a screenshot in which Blair uses the group call regarding the pedophilia situation and says that it was a call in which she railed Click for not doing anything for months.
Of course, she would retell the story quite differently to anyone who would listen. Here's a screenshot where she's sharing that same group call and saying, "This is that call where I railed Click for not doing anything for months." Note that this date is in October, a couple of weeks after we had left SadMilk. The statement about us leaving was made in November, but we had actually left a month prior.
Which it is particular to note here again that the use of the word months, because from my point of view, this would be insinuating that the issue involving the predator had been going on for months with Click knowing about it and doing nothing, as opposed to what Click had shown of the individual causing problems while he was sleeping and was also banned from his Discord server all before he had woken up. So what situation had actually been going on for months that she felt Click wasn't handling? The mods being too lenient with people, that mods sharing adult content in the server, among other mods, unless she is using this screenshot as evidence for a completely different situation to paint herself in a better light, like, what's going on? Click makes a note to mention the date of the screenshot, citing that it was after he and others had left the SadMilk channel, which goes on once again to prove this pattern of behavior in which Blair would begin to spread rumors and villainize those that she lost power over. More screenshots are shared in regards to the mod issue that had been brought up a few times, in which Click is able to show that the admin was reprimanded several times and eventually removed well before Blair began to bring it up to him, which again paints her in a rather malicious light by continuing to state that he was doing nothing to upkeep his Discord server from problematic behavior. Click mentions briefly within this section of his video that he was unsure if Blair continuing to bring up issues within the server was her attempt to put her own mod staff in place. But I can understand how he would feel that way due to her nature of trying to control literally every aspect of her life and other people's lives to a frankly unhealthy degree. The second major accusation that Click mentions within his video is obviously his use of slurs. Click claims that the slur accusations didn't have much merit or proof, showing screenshots from OzMedia, who admits that there was a possibility that the rumors were something Blair, and him as her yes man, made up to villainize him after SadMilk had split apart. And if there was instances of Click using the slurs that Blair was accusing him of, it happened a while ago.
However, to try to make sense of this, I actually asked Oz about this screenshot directly, and he had this to say. "Yeah, I'm not really sure what the R-slur thing was about. I not only don't have any memories of it, but would only have to assume based on my past actions that I either A. over-embellished to further feel accepted of the tone of one instance, never of course realizing the damage it would cause. I'm sorry about this if that is the case. B. Blair and I had discussions in relation to this and had created a behind-the-scenes narrative of what to say. This was also very common when we lived under the same roof. C. There was also watching how Blair would twist and omit truths to people. While I don't have any direct proof of this, I will say that watching Blair just say the right amount of truth to people to get their praise and adoration may have swayed me to do the same. Edit, there's also a chance that you said this like way back in 2019. I think the language I used in the group chat was more to put distance between us, not great on my part. It would have to be one of those, or a mix, honestly, because I don't remember you saying it. Not saying it didn't happen, of course, but I don't have any memories of it. I'm sorry for the pain that comment caused, man. Apologies will never, of course, repair the actions that I have made, and when all this went down. I'm sure there is more shitty things I've done or said that I honestly, for the life of me, can't remember. As for Blair claiming you use abhorrent language such as the N-word, the only evidence she ever gave us was, by her word, claiming that when the two of you were playing Dark Souls 3, you referred to enemies or shadows or ash as N-lets, or something along the lines of that in December of 2019. This was not brought up until after SadMilk split.
It should also be of note that in a later screenshot, it shows that Blair herself casually used the R-slur, but only had an issue with the use of the word when it would support her own narrative that the person that she was talking about was a bad person, so... Click's third section is rather short and simply laughs about Blair's grandstanding about how much she regrets being his friend and doing so much to help him get his YouTube channel back when it was wrongly terminated for a brief time. He states that while she was supportive, she really couldn't do much else besides make tweets towards YouTube to look into the issue, and he actually had a paid network that helped him ultimately get his channel reinstated. The next section of Click's video goes into showing the repeat pattern of Blair's behavior with villainizing people she is losing or completely lost control over. The first instance he shows is how the official SadMilk Twitter account had announced the departure of himself and 2 other members, with Blair then following up the account with the pedophilia being wrong thing that I mentioned earlier during OneTopic section, and then the SadMilk account retweeting that from her or liking it or something, thus giving the illusion that the pedophilia thing might have been what was involved with those members of SadMilk leaving the project.
But it's the specific timing I would like to bring attention to. Here is SadMilk posting on the 1st of November, 3:28 AM, that theclick and OT will not be continuing the new journey with SadMilk and we're leaving the channel. And here's a tweet from iilluminaughtii saying, casual reminder, pedophilia is never a gray area. It is wrong. If someone you know won't take action, then they are complicit to the problem, and so on and so forth, and here are some of the threads. In isolation, there is nothing wrong with this statement. It's one that I obviously support. However, the timing certainly struck us and the community as odd. Immediately after announcing our departure from SadMilk, within 3 hours, this statement was made by iilluminaughtii and retweeted by SadMilk. This, as anyone would know, started many rumors.
Click also briefly mentions a deleted video made by Wonder that held accusations against him in OneTopic, a video that Blair apparently demanded that Wonder make against them. He also shows before and after screenshots from a since deleted community tab on the SadMilk YouTube channel in which the comments were deleted from posts and replies in order to erase any support of Click and others that still remained among the SadMilk audience. There are more screenshots of Blair shit-talking him and other former friends, both in public comment sections and Discord DMs, all after they had left the SadMilk channel. Definitely something to note, according to Click in this screenshot, is that the other person was someone who was banned from OneTopic's Discord.
Here she is, hyping up people who simply got banned from, in this case, OneTopic's Discord. They spent hours of their lives to help some YouTuber they love and look up to. The very least any content creator can do or should do is give the teams the respect they deserve. Mods have been the backbone of every YouTube community, and so on and so forth. Ah, this OT and Click poo has me heated. These stupid fricks.
This is another piece of the behavior I've continued to mention throughout this entire video, in which Blair will find people who have already disliked those whom she dislikes in order to rally them to her cause. Click goes on to reiterate a point he made earlier with more evidence that Blair would mix and match screenshots from different events in order to spin whatever fabricated story she wanted. He continues to show screenshots of Blair being outraged over jokes that she believed insinuated that he condoned pedophilia, even if it meant taking the jokes completely out of context.
Trigger warning, pedo stuff. We were watching an old video from OT and Click last night, and part of the discussion, they were discussing OT memes, and they made a driver of the free candy van joke. Holy poo! What the frick? Ah, really? A white van joke is your banger evidence? Here's the same chat room again, in what I'm assuming is suggesting that my my god, I'm so down with the kids boomer joke from Twitter has pedo implications. Oh, the younglings think I'm so cool. Oh my.
The next screenshot really grinds my gears because looky here, I read that wrong. Because Blair has no fucking reading comprehension skills. I'm so serious when I say it's impossible for her to be a part of the script writing process for her own channel. She has to be just the voiceover because she can't fucking read.
Here she is, leaking and nitpicking a message from me to my staff, proving that she did indeed have insiders in my mod team after she and I had parted ways and the crossover staff had officially left. She says, yikes, and here is me saying that, oh yeah, you noticed the staff has left again. Basically, what happened is that OT and I left SadMilk. It was becoming an increasingly tense environment with the group, and at the end of the day, we had no real option but to take a step back. With that change, not surprising that staff from SadMilk was asked to leave, and I hold no grudge over it. The positive side to this is we will have more freedom within our own ranks to form this place as we want it to be without too much influence from outside parties. Paired with that, I will now have more time on my hands and I can help with day-to-day tasks. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in staff chats or DMs. I apologize for this rocky road, and I hope it will be easier in the near future. I will also book yet another meeting, Lemao, in the near future. Love y'all. He just lied to his staff about what really happened. What, I just said that people left. They did, though. They weren't asked to leave. Oh, wait, I read that wrong, but he's pinning it on me. Why are you spying on my Discord, man?
Regardless of Blair's reading comprehension, the issue with this screenshot, according to Click, is that Blair was not within his Discord server and thus should not have had access to this screenshot. Especially because the screenshot was taken from a mod-specific channel in his server, effectively meaning that someone, a part of his moderation team, was spying for Blair's benefit. Next click shows how something he was unaware of happened within a voice chat while he was away that caused some of his mods to leave the server, with the only snippets of conversation being out of context text, things like saying Team Blair and fuck click.
But when I took the screenshots, the names were already white. They left in the middle of the night, and the only context I had to this was a random piece of a no mic VC chat that read like this. What the? Of course, I'm just confused. Understandable. Has everyone left Click already? Okay, I'm gone. Team Blair all the way. F those dudes. Of course not. The Click is gonna be interesting from now on. Good luck with that. It's gonna be interesting. Any coffee for this Click was my original home, but still F him.
Another screenshot is shown of people digging up content from 10 plus years ago in which Click allegedly used the R slur, and how they didn't know why the video would even still be up. I can personally imagine why the video would still be up, because it's 10 fucking years old. I can't remember what I had for breakfast most days. Do you know how unlikely it is for someone to remember every little thing they said in a video from 10 years ago? Especially someone who uploads content pretty consistently, especially someone who was learning English as a second language, so a lot of words were probably like just going over his head that he had learned in context of the English language. Click has literally over 1,000 videos on his channel, so sure, let's go rewatch every single one of them in order to find all of the ones that didn't age well. Also, even if Click did go through all of his old content to find things problematic, YouTube has this nifty little feature now that lets you trim out parts of the video without taking the whole video down. Not to mention stuff directly to the creator is just empty whining in my opinion. If you're not going to call for change and you're just being mad for the sake of being mad, if you think a creator is bad, problematic, toxic, whatever buzzword you want to use, and don't want to engage with them in hopes that they change, just don't watch their content. Unless, like, you're hate watching. If that's your thing, go for it, babe. That being said, I hope Click did at least edit the older content he is aware of for the sake of the improvement, but again, the video is over 10 years old. More screenshots followed Click's use of slurs and older content, featuring Blair claiming she's never used a slur before, and more people hunting through Click's old content to find stuff. Seriously, he has so much free labor going on here that if they just brought this stuff up to his attention in a professional manner instead of just using their free time to shit on him, he probably could correct a lot of it. And maybe they weren't doing it just for the sake of being normal haters. After all, Click then shows a screenshot between OzMedia and someone whom Blair was actively paying a good chunk of change to in order to drag up dirt on Click.
And if this wasn't enough, here's a former staff member of hers getting paid to sift through raw audio recordings of me looking for dirt, more specifically the R word. I needed to work with this person to help me find Click saying the R slur in SadMilk's raw audio. I can do that, just let me grab a shower and I'll be down. She claims he said it in a SadMilk video, but can't remember which one, and she's over her head. I'll pay you $200 to find it, and here's the payment.
Dirt, mind you, that no one would be aware of since it is plainly stated in the screenshot that it was from raw audio, meaning not even the final cut that was made publicly available. Which does not excuse the use of the word to me, don't worry, but it does allow Blair to do the same thing that she's been shown to have done with just text screenshots. Alter things around, out of context, out of order, in order to spin whatever story for the situation that she wants. Click goes on how he doesn't understand why Blair would be friends with him if she thought that he was such a horrible person. Despite leaving SadMilk in what he thought was good terms and them still being friends, Blair proceeded to spread narratives that he was a bigoted individual and attempted to ruin his reputation and career by literally any means necessary. Repeat pattern of behavior. If she doesn't have control over you, she wanted you destroyed. The final section of Click's video is more screenshots of Blair's behind-the-scenes behavior, using people from his server in order to effectively spy on him. But the most damning thing in these screenshots show Blair's use of an alt account called DoobieSmirts, an account that she used frequently in order to spread rumors about the former friends and collaborators of the SadMilk channel that left, and she would use it to instigate drama and harassment among the community, which included, like, mass tagging, like, followers and people that had collabed with them individually and things like that.
Here is iilluminaughtii having a conversation with the same admin, sharing the same kind of, dirt-digging old videos that we've seen previously in this video. And she says, 16 seconds, the alt account is gonna love this. In the next screenshot, you can see her writing out a draft. I saw in the SadMilk announcement of all the milkmen, now I'm seeing the comments. We all agree it's obviously not on good terms. Blair tweeting about being stabbed in the back, etc., etc. This draft matches with one of the posts made by an alt account called Doobie Schmertz. Here is the same account, Doobie Schmertz, on Twitter. This was an account I remember distinctly from 2020, 2021 that was relentlessly harassing myself, my friends, my colleagues, my streaming colleagues, past colleagues, ex-SadMilk members, community members, staff, you name it. You name it.
There's also a screenshot of where it is presumed Blair admits to OzMedia that she was the one behind the Doobie Schmertz alt account, and Oz literally just begging her to stop the endless harassment. Click's final thoughts of his video is just like a small conclusion, really pained about how Blair did all of these things just because people left her project and she didn't like that, and how she continued to tell these half-truths and twisted events in order to fit her narratives and ruin people around her.
My only personal wish is that she just stops. Stop obsessing over people in Discord. Stop trying to spin a narrative or dig up dirt just because someone left your collaboration channel. We just want to be left alone.
The next person I'll be going over who made a response to Blair is Wonder. His video is understandably the longest among the currently available response videos, which I imagine is due to the sheer length of his section with Blair's own video. Since Blair had so much control over him, she definitely had a lot more fuel to rip into him through the course of her video than pretty much anybody else. The first notable thing that Wonder mentions within his video is that the reason he was silent for over 2 years regarding all of the massive mistreatment Blair subjected him to was because of threats related to an NDA. An NDA, for those of you not familiar, is a non-disclosure agreement and basically acts kind of like a gag order. Most people who try to use NDAs against others simply don't want someone to talk about them in a negative light, but it's to my understanding, which I'm not a lawyer, that NDAs are actually meant as a way to protect company secrets and methods. They're not really supposed to be used as a way of silencing detractors from personal drama, which is why we frequently see people who claim to be under NDAs simply speaking out anyway once they get the courage to do so. Think like Onision making that one, survivor sign an NDA after that incident. Just yuck. Most YouTubers using NDAs really don't realize that the point of them is to protect confidential information, and saying someone is an asshole is not really confidential information. Funnily enough, while getting into what he really wants to discuss within the video, Wonder mentions how he was not previously supplying receipts for things like the issues revolving the car that Blair had repoed from him due to the situation being a part of an ongoing legal issue. But since she mentioned it first within her video, as the lawyers like to say, it opened the doors for him to be able to show his own proof against her now, which is delicious karma, in my opinion. If you're going to use legal intimidation against someone, the best thing to do, in the wise old words of Emily D. Baker, is shut your mouth. After going through some thoughts in regards to Blair's harassment of Click due to the pedophilia accusations and allegations, Wonder goes on to verify the events in which he was present for, such as the voice call in which Blair snapped at OneTopic and told him to shut the fuck up. Wonder also acknowledges that the members of SadMilk began to leave the project. He helped Blair spread false narratives that they were all lazy and did nothing more than record silly dialogue and left all the rest of the work for others to do.
I'd like to point out that I directly lied on this post. Click, OneTopic, and the others did in fact assist in SadMilk greatly, but they were growing increasingly frustrated and burnt out as what had started as a fun project of friends had turned into a content farm.
He also acknowledges the nature of SadMilk had turned into a content farm and that the continual push to do more every single day had really burnt everyone out, and that they all just didn't feel like their work would matter much when videos from the channel would just randomly get deleted since Blair deemed them not good enough.
Where this reached its climax of enough is enough was when members would take time out of their day to show up to recordings upon their own busy channels and lives, only to find video and audio recordings of entire SadMilk episodes had been deleted due to quote-unquote not being good enough.
After his brief address for the SadMilk stuff, the real first section of Wonder's video is him going through the financial claims that Blair had made against the former members, when she had said that she was fronting most of the bill to pay the behind-the-scenes staff and the other members just refused to help her. He shows on screen the quote from Blair's video that claimed that Wonder had opted to become an editor for the channel in order not to pay his fair share, and instead get paid instead, which even without Wonder correcting her shortly, it just seems like an odd thing to complain about. If Wonder, a member already on the team, was also an editor for the team, that would make one less person you really had to worry about, wouldn't it? Like, one less hire? Again, it just doesn't make sense to villainize him for wanting to help edit videos. Like, again, going above and beyond, like, the original work requirements, but okay. Agreeing with Wonder, I see this as Blair trying to paint Wonder as being greedy with his behavior. To go above and beyond to make the channel great should be praised. Just my opinion. This kind of reminds me of the people who shame those that work in fast food places, honestly. Like, oh my god, I need that burger, or else they're gonna throw a drink at you, but if you flip burgers for a living, you're a piece of shit. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me to demonize someone for performing a service that you actively seek out. Anyway, regardless, Wonder goes on to clarify that he had actually only worked on 3, maybe 5 videos for the SadMilk channel as a whole, so Blair's narrative that he was taking work from the editors in order not to pay them is just false. False, and she was spinning this while using the little grain of truth to solidify it to her audience. He insists here that he actually always paid his fair share of the editor fees, which he goes on to actually show bank statements of his payments towards the channel, and he continues with these bank statements to contradict Blair's claims that she was not reimbursed for paying the editors.
How I came to even edit a single SadMilk video was when I was in a Discord call with the SadMilk members, and while we were all chatting, having a good time, I, in my free time, edited a small little demo using all of our sprites.
Everyone, welcome to SadMilk.
Download today. Oh, sorry.
No!
Welcome to SadMilk. I was then offered, hey, if you want to edit a video, we'd be happy to pay you. I was such a new creator and I was so new to contract work itself that I personally thought $20 was fair pay for my work after my initial payment that I asked for was Burger King because I just wanted dinner. So while yes, Blair did pay for edits, she was always reimbursed for this. As you can see stated on the screen, you will find bank statements I made directly to SadMilk during its infancy.
Which makes me wonder myself, like, why would she claim not to have been paid? Did she not expect someone to dig through their bank statements to disprove her? Addressing the problems with SadMilk is very brief in Wonder's video, like I explained, which is probably due to so many other people on Twitter and in their own response videos already really going over everything in great detail and why the project began to crumble apart. I feel that the only new information that Wonder really supplied here was the bank statements proving that Blair, at least by him, was reimbursed for her payments towards the channel despite her saying that she wasn't. So this puts us firmly into the area in which Wonder had the most to say in his hour and 20-minute long video, all of the accusations Blair makes against him in her rather lengthy character assassination attempt. Wonder addresses Blair's claim that all of his Twitter thread claims were just anecdotal, which Wonder does agree that it was, but only because any potential legal issues that could arise from this drama if he was using screenshots. I feel that Blair probably just didn't know that Wonder had this amount of proof that he was going to show through his video, or if she did, was just kind of like banking on him being too scared under the legal threat to say anything. But again, since she goes on to use her own documentation to twist the story in her favor, she's opening the door to counterpoints to be made against her, which is obviously what Wonder proceeds to do within his video. Wonder goes on to discuss Blair's section in regards to wage theft, specifically the time he went out of his way to fix the messed up video, which is something I already gave my thoughts on in the section dedicated in Blair's response video. Basically, Blair whined about how she didn't understand how Wonder missed Christmas with his family when the video he worked on was finalized early in the morning, seemingly like forgetting that editing takes several hours of time and humans generally need sleep to function. Once again, Wonder shows bank statements that Blair's recountment of the payments towards him in particular were off.
So I'd like for us to view the following bank statements, 2 in particular, one on January 29th, 2021 for $125, and another on February 29th, 2021 for $600. Now, I tried to dig deeper, but this just says a transaction from a bank occurred. I'd like to state that at first, I believed I was receiving SadMilk payments via PayPal, so I tried to find an old email. Since I was making a fair amount of money, I would usually just let money stack into my PayPal and I would take it all out at once. And you can see right here that this is what a statement like that would look like in my bank account. At this time, I worked full-time, so my only income was from Google AdSense, Twitch, and SadMilk. While it has been a long time, if I remember correctly, these payments would numerically and chronologically line up with SadMilk and editor payments. It is the only possible source of this income that makes sense, which then shows me for the month of January, I actually only received one SadMilk payment if that's the case. And it also distinctly shows that I was in fact paid separately as both SadMilk talent and an editorial talent. I'd like to note that these payments are over the course of 1 to 2 months, not a month and a half. At the beginning of January, you can see I was paid $100 from this income source. That would make sense given half of the $200 video would, yes, be $100. However, if you look at the month of December, I did not receive one payment from SadMilk. So I would assume unless SadMilk just did very poorly that month and we made absolutely zero income, as I did not manage these channels' finances, this payment would be the SadMilk payment for December. And if it was for fixing the video, why was I clearly paid the $600 here followed by the prior regular SadMilk bank statement, $500 being for the original video I did and $100 being for the video I corrected? I had someone else take a look at the calendar, and if these payments were bi-weekly and I had a pay period beginning on the 1st, my pay period should have seen payments starting from the 1st, followed by the 15th, the 29th, which is correct, but we were missing a pay period, the 12th, then the 26th, but I was paid on the 19th. You can argue that SadMilk was performing bad financially, which resulted in delayed or no payments by this time, as we had not uploaded since December and views did in fact dwindle. But that begs the question, if the payment of $600 is an editor payment, which I'd argue is because SadMilk itself and its contractors never saw an amount that large in its history, why am I being paid for it not half a month late, but almost 2 months late? My only other theory is that these payments were in a source such as PayPal, where I could allow the funds to store up then deposit. However, it would still be delayed and show I was paid separately as an editor and contracted talent for SadMilk.
The next section of the video goes into the process in which Wander came to live with Blair, addressing the tale in which Blair had, spun in her own video that Wander was so miserable living in Texas and hated his roommates because they were so unmotivated to do better in life, yada yada. All of which Wander contradicts, obviously, with first stating that hating Texas is kind of just a universal feeling for anyone living in Texas, with it more being a cultural joke of the area than any, real legitimate issue with the place, and the issues regarding his former roommate were average, everyday annoyances, but nothing that would warrant him leaving them to their own devices and hating them forever. He does go on to state that he had different life goals than his friends, and that caused them not to really relate to one another anymore, but that didn't really make those friends terrible people. He also states that the issues revolving his car, that she was stating was a complete fabrication, made up to push the narrative that she was Wander's savior by the time he moved in with her. Blair mentions in her video about flying Wander out to Colorado in order to discuss him living with her, which in a silent slideshow, which I wish he would have talked through this, Wander disproves this by showing that the flights were actually for the recording for the SadMilk Christmas special, the same video that later caused issues when he had to pull an all-nighter in order to finish correcting the editing before its deadline. Wander explains that he ended up living in Colorado was actually due to Blair promising him a whole-ass house, as she wanted to get into the real estate market, make a company town, and he seemed like a first good choice to be a tenant because he was already working with and later for Blair. His house was supposed to be ready to move into by August, and the move-in date was just pushed back. He showed screenshots of being uncomfortable with the notion of living with Blair and Oz, especially living with them rent-free, but he ended up putting those reservations aside and lived with them for a month or so anyway, with the end goal of him moving into his own house that Blair had initially promised him when it was available.
To try to paint me as a freeloader when you also leave out that I was originally only supposed to stay until August, you were supposed to be my landlord, and that I only stayed 30 days in Colorado feels like a contorted attack on who I am as a person.
Wander also explains that he did a lot around the house in order to try to make sure that he wasn't viewed as a freeloader. With a screenshot, he shows concerns that he had been treated like a scapegoat whenever Blair and Oz would become stressed out, emphasizing that everyone just kind of needed their own space and they weren't really getting it with one another. Feeling continuously guilty over the living situation, Wander even looked for apartments so that they could have their own space away from him and they wouldn't need to butt heads all the time anymore, and instead of being understanding to any degree, he was instead told that he was taking advantage of them. While I can't confirm this was stated by Blair, it wouldn't come as a surprise since she really lashes out against the people that she feels that she's losing control over.
I tried at every possible turn to earn my keep, and when I felt alienated, I tried to actively find an apartment in Colorado Springs to give them both the space, as I felt horrible, seemingly never being able to help in any way at all.
I believe that Wonder living with her, and by extension Oz, rent-free was definitely by design, as one part of the mini to make Wonder feel indebted to her. The next section is discussing Blair's employee benefits and reimbursement program and how bitter she was that Wonder wasn't taking advantage of it, which is something else I mentioned earlier in the video, being a strange thing to be upset about if you weren't trying to actively control every aspect of someone's life. And Wonder's explanation behind why he wasn't using the benefits program made sense even from the perspective of someone who wasn't endlessly suspicious of Blair's motives. He just didn't have the time to take advantage of those benefits. Being fresh to the area, he didn't know about places to go, things to do, and while he says he wasn't thinking about doctors and dentists, I can attest to, as an adult who has needed those services, how long do you think it takes to find a regular doctor and dentist? I mean, he only lived there for like a month. Sure, walk-in practices are available in most areas, but just from my experience in my own city, walk-in services suck ass. They basically want to get you in and out as fast as possible. For example, I went to a walk-in for a physical earlier this year, and they ignored literally everything I said in regards to my current health status and woes, faked checking my pulse, asked me if my spouse was beating me at home, and then told me to leave. In order to get a regular physician, you have to call ahead and ask if they're accepting new patients, and generally they don't really do that until like the end of the year. Also, another thing that you don't get until the end of the year is health insurance, so I'm a little confused on how Blair was able to like provide that to Wonder when the open enrollment period for health insurance is like November, and he was like living there in like July, June? Somewhere in like the summer, which I know there's like a stipulation for earlier enrollment during the year, so like if you have like a major life event like getting a new job, but does like that really apply to like contractor work? Like, does the job that Blair offered you seriously have that kind of like registered company that she's able to like instantly offer health insurance to new hires? I mean, part of me really doubts that, but I'm self-employed. I'm a loser using my spouse's company insurance, so like, who knows? But it just really sounds fishy to me. After the brief section about the benefits program is the section in which Blair cites firing Wonder for not doing any work, missing deadlines, and being inappropriate, which delightfully is something Wonder can once again refute with screenshots, showing that he was fired prior to his deadline, that he communicated why he needed the extension in the first place, and the thing that he said that Blair claimed was so inappropriate and grounds for termination.
It's here on this call that I was fired for explicitly not meeting deadlines, which I find highly confusing due to once more I must reiterate that my deadline was August 2nd. Not to be redundant, but I'd like to remind you that I flew to another state just to meet this deadline for my boss who was constantly subtweeting about me.
I find it especially interesting to note that, once again, Wonder had gone above and beyond to try to fix the situation with his broken computer in order to meet that deadline by literally flying from Texas back to Colorado in hopes of having OzMedia help him fix the computer. It was when Wonder had gotten back from the trip that he realized that he was locked out of the shared video files for the project, which could have made it impossible for him to even do the work that he was supposed to do, if not for the fact that he already had the files he needed. By locking him out of the shared files, this would effectively sabotage him from working if he did not already have the files in hand. I imagine that it would have turned into a lot of back and forth messaging about like regaining access to the files and him missing the deadline that way, and then the formal termination. Instead, since he was still able to do the work on the videos, I feel that Blair just fired him earlier than the deadline because she knew that she couldn't use the deadline as an excuse anymore. After a brief mention of the joke that was supposedly so bad that it got him fired,
if I could be an animal for a day, I would be a furry, and my favorite food would be ass.
Wonder goes on to detail wages as Blair's employee and the toxicity that was related to the fact that his home, job, and car were all tied to her and her seemingly erratic behavior. As we'll see in Oz's video next, Blair loved to tie herself financially to her victims in order to make them completely reliant on her, and despite the issues revolving the car that she repoed from Wonder in the middle of the night, I feel like he was very lucky to be able to get away from her before she was able to completely destroy him financially in the same way OzMedia claims she had done to him. Wonder then goes on to touch on the issues regarding the infamous BMW car. He specifies how he did not ask for nor really wanted the car in the first place, but Blair talked him into it and he agreed into getting it from her due to his naivety from being so young and inexperienced with large financial decisions. Something again we're going to hear repeated with Oz in his video in regards to his own debt to Blair. Curiously, Wonder also states that Blair had him sign a contract in regards to the car after she was already aware that he was going back to Texas in order to visit his dad.
I explained the situation to my dad, and I ended up leaving to go see my father so I could spend the 4th of July with him and stay a while so I could mentally reset. I also did digital work, and this was not in violation of my employment as I could work wherever I wanted via laptop. But before going, Blair had me sign her BMW contract she had been meaning to get to me for a while. She was fully aware of my intent to visit my father and stay a while, especially given that, again, I worked remotely.
Knowing that Blair was aware of his plans to visit his father makes that stipulation in the contract, the one where, like, it can't leave the county in Colorado, the big one that she cites behind her repossessing the car in the first place, particularly fucking malicious. Because, again, I'm interpreting that as you can't take the car outside of the county at all. This is also where Wonder brings up, like, the doubts behind the legality of the contract he signed with Blair in regards to the car, as he states that he had a lawyer look over the contract and it seems not to really be legally binding. Regardless of the legality of the contract, Wonder goes on to show that he did have proof of insurance, something that Blair had cited he didn't have and was one of the reasons for taking the car back on top of the car leaving the county in Colorado.
Blair claims I broke the contract by the following: no proof of insurance, cars to reside in El Paso County. Okay, well, here's my proof of insurance, and here's my official mailing address during this time. You can clearly see it states Colorado. Here again, you can also see that my mailing address has not changed after the repossession. This car was not residing in Texas, as I did not reside in Texas. I lived in Colorado.
As Wonder goes into more details in regards to the car, it becomes increasingly more obvious, at least to me, that the claims that he had breached the contract was the reason for Blair wanting to take the car back was just kind of an excuse to save face amongst those watching Blair's response video. From these continued screenshots showing that Wonder was going to willingly give the car back as opposed to keeping it, and giving Blair an additional payment. Additionally, when asked for paperwork showing the true price and value of the car in order to accurately determine the payments he needed to make, Wonder was ghosted.
Blair informed Oz that she wanted me to pay something that is known as a depreciation value, which is essentially, it's like, okay, you can't pay for the car, so you're going to pay for the value that the car lost while it was in your possession. I agreed. I didn't want further bad blood. I just wanted this whole situation to be done, as it had caused me enough stress as is. Oz gave me a set of options as to what I could do with the car, and I picked option 2, where it was agreed I would bring the car back to Colorado, gather my belongings, and I'd pay the value via regular payments, etc. However, when I asked to see everything my name was tied to legally with the car, which any person would do, I was met with a copy of the car contract. So I asked again to see the paperwork of the car. This was to ensure I was obtaining an accurate account of the car's value so I could legally assure what I was paying for.
Effectively, from what I'm interpreting from this, with my tinfoil hat of course, is that Blair got pissed off that Wonder would rather return the car than pay the additional cost to her on top of the pre-existing monthly payments on the car. When he was asking for the paperwork regarding the car, so he wasn't fucking scammed out of whatever amount of money Blair wanted to charge, she threw a temper tantrum and went on to take her shiny new toy back. Again, she lost control over someone, and she retaliated against them harshly by not only just taking the car back from Wonder, but all of his belongings within the car. Also, it is to know that Wonder states that she came to get the car in the middle of the night, effectively making this the second time that I know of, at least, that Blair waited until someone was sleeping in order to fuck with them. First with theclick and now Wonder. When Blair never gave Wonder his belongings back, he tried to post his situation on Twitter only to be met with a legal threat due to an NDA, which I don't really believe would have had like any legal standing. Actually, the threatening message in regards to the NDA stated not to say anything about the company, not Blair herself as a person. The car and theft of Wonder's belongings literally had nothing to do with the company, but rather a personal thing between himself and Blair. So from an amateur, non-legal perspective, the NDA effectively wouldn't even do shit. Blair isn't a company, she's just a bitch. Wonder had sent legal notices to Blair, actually, in an attempt to demand that she return his belongings, and they were ignored at first before a representative, presumably like a lawyer, from Blair threatened to sue Wonder for harassment. This, no doubt, due to the items in question already have been disposed of long ago.
What she fails to show in her video is my skateboard, both my SadMilk and wonderstruckguy play buttons, my $800 GoPro set, and a whole list of other items I was prohibited from obtaining, which I found out recently from Oz. These items were subsequently thrown in the trash after some time. I sent her one last text stating I would be ceasing communication and that she could reach me and make arrangements for my belongings via my father's number. Not one attempt was ever made. Legal demand letters were sent and signed off for. You can see the draft of such a demand letter and what it looked like on official paper in my Google Drive. After months and months of trying and receiving no communication or update, we were told by someone who represented Blair to back off or they would go after us for harassment.
Painfully, Wonder goes into discussing his mental health and how it all declined rapidly due to Blair, how she effectively ruined his life for a while, destroyed his finances, stole things he could never replace, cost him his home, spread false narratives about him so his friends no longer would speak to him, isolating him into himself more and more until he just broke down. And the worst part of it all is that she uses his frantic messages to her about everything as fuel in her video to humiliate him further while acting like the savior, all the while sending messages to Oz about feeling threatened and needing to protect herself, which again, either spinning this narrative for the sake of spinning the narrative, or, as I have interpreted numerous times, she has no reading comprehension because the message that Wonder has sent her was after he spoke to his therapist and got himself together and was not actively trying to hurt himself anymore, and never ever threatened to go after her states upon states away. After the rather long and heartbreaking section relating to Wonder's mental health, he goes on to discuss the accusations made against him in regards to his dog. Most of these accusations that Blair threw out really just didn't matter, in my opinion, as it's obvious that James the dog is well loved, well taken care of, and Wonder has done everything he can to be a great dog dad. And the fact that the two dogs didn't get along as well as Blair wanted is not an issue individual to Wonder, nor is it really an issue relating to the dogs themselves, but rather that none of the humans involved in this situation knew the proper way to introduce the dogs. I'm so serious when I say that the shit with the dogs literally makes no difference whatsoever and matters the least among all of the other shit that Blair threw around. The last major section of Wonder's video is in relation to the photos of the messy room. The same photos Blair claimed was a room that she and Oz was using to unpack from moving or Amazon or whatever, and it was such a drastic violation of boundaries to go into that room when Wonder was told not to. This is another thing that I touched on previously in like another section, but I still like really laugh at the ridiculousness of the situation, knowing that the photo was taken a whole year after Wonder had even moved out.
It goes as far to even do an image breakdown analysis of the room itself to prove this image, which I found peculiar watching this for the first time, because if she took this much effort to analyze the image, I don't understand how she didn't notice that the bed on the bottom left was not purchased until 2022, a year after I left Colorado. How do I know this? Because I didn't take these photos. Oz did, and I held back out of respect for my friend.
I went into lengths to discuss how I first was surprised that Blair didn't take the route to excuse the mess by claiming that she was struggling with mental health, such as depression or executive dysfunction, because again, that shit is just so real and understandable for so many people, but since Blair views mental health as something to weaponize against people, she opted instead to spin a story about the photo, believing that Wonder had taken the photo, or at the very least, like, assume that Oz wouldn't speak out against Blair and admitting that he took the photo, etc. Oz makes an appearance actually sparsely throughout this video, and in this section he discusses that no matter how much he cleaned, Blair would continue to make more and more of a mess until it felt too hopeless and helpless to try to help with upkeeping the chores.
This is tricky to talk about just because like that was like the condition of living with Blair. Like that's always how it has been. No matter how many times cleaning was attempted, it always ended up becoming that level of mess. There was no cleaning in that house. It was always a disaster. No matter how many times attempts were made, it would take less than a week or two for things to re-messify. I even remember on my 22nd birthday, I had asked like, hey, can we please get like the kitchen and living room cleaned up so we actually have like a space to exist? And that was like my birthday present for that year, was cleaning the kitchen and the living room. Just because the house was always a mess. Yeah, some of it was mine as well, but the thing was there was never a home for, like right now the house is actually, house is pretty clean right now. I can show pictures of that. But there was no clean. It was always like that. It wasn't just one room, it was every room. And I remember when I was messaging you, there was just a level of frustration because it felt like no matter how often I would actually clean and do stuff, it just always like remessified. There was no cleaning. It just felt useless, and she would never help with cleaning. It was always me. I was always the one breaking down all 800 of her Amazon boxes. I was always the one doing anything cleaning wise. It just felt like I was there to clean up her mess.
I do see it being pretty easy to accumulate clutter from working from home, since I also work from home, but you have to be willing to kind of make an effort to correct the issues where you can, when you can, especially like in my case, dealing with mental health problems. While I could potentially try to make the argument that they could have had a discussion about potentially hiring a housekeeper at some point, because after all, Blair bragged about having so much fucking money she could retire early, it probably wouldn't have been much of an issue for her to get a maid if she was incapable of helping Oz with the household chores. But now, with all of the examples of Blair needing to exert power over those around her, and knowing in hindsight that Blair was dating Oz, I wouldn't be surprised if the lack of household upkeep was another controlling tactic she implemented in order to keep Oz beneath her thumb. He would cite in his own video how she would lash out against him instead of having any reasonable discussions, and I have no doubt that arguments in regards to the mess occurred frequently within their lives due to the level of filth. In the final segments of Wonder's video, he goes on to discuss how he was able to reconnect with Oz earlier this year after having cut ties with one another due to Blair's toxicity. And while it took some time to come out in comparison to the other former members of SadMilk, OzMedia did indeed end up making a brief video in regards to everything. Despite stating in Wonder's video that he didn't want to, nor was he planning on making a video about Blair, he ended up doing so anyway when Blair began to frantically send him and even his dad cease and desist notices in order to try to silence him from speaking out against her. In his video, OzMedia states that this video, is not the final product, and that he's actually in the process of making a video about Blair that is over 100 pages in script length and more. Something that he's going to be putting in a lot of effort into, and it's going to be monstrously long by the time it's finished and released. But he has to take his time on that video in order to get all of the facts correct. He states that he has no doubt that the things that are going to be discussed in that video are going to end up being used in a courtroom, as Blair had been putting more and more legal pressure on him since the start of all of this drama. Mind you, I think he stated at some point in some video or Twitter thread that Blair was making legal threats to him prior to him even speaking out to begin with. Oz uses this video to take a moment to clarify statements made on Twitter in regards to Blair trying to take him to court over his house, elaborating how she was able to financially ruin him similarly to Wonderstruck, but incessantly worse by putting him in massive debt that he had to pay back to her personally.
Why these obligations were placed onto me? At the time, Blair had bad credit, so all of the purchases, loans, everything was being placed in my name. This included the car that she purchased, then revoked from Wonderstruck. Eventually, though, the financial responsibilities that I incurred would stack up on me, building a mountain of monthly debt that would lead me into several financially tight months, and eventually just breaking. This would lead me to asking Blair, my partner, for financial help for things such as my home, which she was living in. Help from my partner, who at any given time would be making up to 30 times my monthly income. These amounts of assistance would be added to a ledger of debt. This ledger would creep into the range of $180,000, an insurmountable amount where I don't even understand how she got there. That number ballooned higher and higher, the number ever increasing, and I never questioned it out of guilt for needing help.
By being his boss and someone whom he owed a debt to, Oz cites how all of the money he was earning by working for Blair was just going back into her own bank account while he was paying her off, which is just such drastic financial abuse and puts Oz in the position of essentially being an indentured servant to Blair, which is entirely illegal.
I tried to pay Blair back in any way that I could, by the way. I felt indentured to her by this debt she had hanging over my head. But this led to the end of 2022, where Blair would take advantage of not only my financial strife, but both my legal and financial illiteracy in December of that year. When I was 23 and Blair was nearly 31, Blair, with her lawyer, would create an honestly quite confusing legal document for me to sign where I would agree to pay back her debt. Blair also knew that the $2,500 that she was having me pay monthly towards that debt was almost as much as I was making monthly working for her. This would mean that I could barely pay for anything else in my life other than the debt that I owed her. Everything I made working for her was going right back into her pocket.
He explains how, due to his young age and inexperience with loans and other legally binding financial agreements, Blair was able to trick him into putting a lot of her own expenses in his name due to her, quote, having bad credit. But in hindsight, we can all infer that she did these things maliciously in order to keep him tied to her through the debt. I mean, it's a little hard to cut someone out of your life if you're obligated to make, monetary contributions to them after all. And maybe I have these opinions because of the relationship I currently have with my own spouse, but I find it so sinister that when Oz was struggling to meet his own financial burdens due to Blair effectively making him take on all of the financial responsibilities within the relationship, when he asked her for help with the finances, she only did when he agreed that he'd have to pay her back for all of her contributions. Just pretty yikes. These were financial burdens that she had thrust upon him under false pretenses too, so the fact that she wouldn't be willing to part with any of her own money in order to help her romantic partner is just really greedy and abusive to me personally, like my thoughts on the matter. I just recall in another video how it was mentioned that Blair would brag about being such an amazing businesswoman and having the background in accounting and all of that, and it's just so obvious to me now that the reason why she's so confident in her claims that she literally has enough money to retire off of, yada yada, is because she would actively trick people into taking on her financial burdens and responsibility and then steal their money from under them. I wonder if this tactic is one of those white-collar crimes that Oz alludes to within his video.
To me, it feels like Blair is taking every course of action that she can to prevent this video from being produced. From legal threats to trying to take my home, which wouldn't be surprising, considering Blair's alleged white-collar crimes I intend to expose with evidence within my video.
Allegedly. Within the video, Oz details classic signs of abuse he suffered while being with Blair, in addition to the control over him financially, like threatening to break up with him if he didn't agree to her whims, how she had isolated him from his past support networks by moving him away from his friends and family to a completely new state, new area, and how any new friends that he made had to first be approved by her prior to coming into his life. She literally controlled every aspect of his life. And when you think that she couldn't control any more of his world, Blair had Oz sign over his home as collateral for his debts towards her, a move she made against Oz without him having any legal representation because he couldn't afford it, because he was indebted.
Blair would bring me to her lawyer's office, put me in a room alone with the two of them, with papers in front of me. Papers which I foolishly signed for a myriad of reasons, ranging from Blair expressing that this would mend our relationship, that it was the right thing for me to do, that this would also protect her legally and prevent her from getting into trouble with the IRS. She also would describe to me, and while I can't remember if this exact word was ever used, she essentially explained to me that because she used company funds to assist me, that she had committed embezzlement. And by converting the amount that I owed her into a loan with her company, this would save her skin legally.
By converting his debt to her as a loan in the form of a deed of trust, Blair sealed Oz's foreseeable fate, gave her leverage against him to try to silence him forever, which almost worked, as Oz states that she had already set his house to foreclose in December of this year, 2023. If he fails to fight this legally against her, he will effectively become homeless, and as a bonus kick to the teeth, she took his furniture when she moved out.
Also, she took the furniture.
With the sheer intensity of the response videos pouring in from the biggest accusers from SadMilk, the backlash against Blair was obviously pretty swift, with sponsors pulling away and subscribers and views dipping drastically. Instead of continuing to put her foot in her mouth, Blair has sent out cease and desist notices where she could, and proceeded to continue to upload her usual content, but appears to have, abandoned her Twitter for the time being, but not before tweeting out that she was aware of the, quote, false allegations against her and how she was going to handle things legally, which, sounds awfully familiar. Maybe even a little creepily familiar. Because that's basically the same song and dance that Shannon gave during her Lolcow and Emily Artful scandal, except it looks like Blair has an actual, grasp upon the law enough to be dealing with more legitimate lawyers than the copy-paste type document that Shannon tried to use against Emily. As with any internet scandal, the backlash against the original offender resulted in a lot of bystander responses, commentary like me, and people digging even deeper into Blair's past to find issues that she had prior to these, accusations about SadMilk and stuff, right? And with anybody who had been on the internet for a long time, as Blair has been, she indeed had skeletons within her closet to, unfortunately for her, uncover. From things not very relevant, like a story of her having a weird shit, to her being a part of some, anti-SJW channel, which would arguably be one of the first examples of her, grifting nature, as we now come to find out from the responses from former SadMilk members, that despite her making content against things like crypto farming and company towns, these are things that she was actively participating in herself, or at least trying to behind the scenes. It's not uncommon for creators of a reasonable size like Blair to get critical videos made about them for a variety of valid or even dumb reasons. Regardless of the content of those critical videos, it's within a creator's best interest to just kind of let the criticism either empower them to do better in the future or ignore it if you don't like what was being discussed about you. The only exception to this really should be things that can actively harm your character, like defamation and stuff, that can cause you loss of revenue. When Nicholas DiOrio made a critical video about her, she opted not to even try to handle the situation herself with him personally, but instead reached out to people included within his video to get them to file copyright claims against said video, like an artist whose fan art was in the thumbnail of the video and another content creator who had a clip maybe in the video.
She's been known to abuse the copyright system to take down critical videos, and has even gotten artists to copyright strike fan art to get critical videos taken down of her.
Now, there was nothing in the video that Blair could copyright strike herself. So you want to know what she does? She decided to abuse the copyright strike system by contacting the artist who made fan art of Illuminaughtii that Nick used for the thumbnail of his video. And she got the artist to copyright strike the video and get it taken down. And the way she contacted this artist was just very manipulative, because she referred to Nick's channel as a hate channel, and she was just letting this artist know that her work was being used so that way the artist can protect their work. Now, the person she contacted was somebody by the name of Valerie, and it was because there was footage of her vlog used in the video.
That person messages Blair back and says, no, I'm pretty sure that's fair use.
Or maybe those were two different video instances, but still. The point stands that Blair would frequently reach out to people included in videos to get them to try to copyright videos that she didn't like, basically. Someone else on Twitter brought up the time in which Blair actually rallied her fans to harass an artist for drawing fan art of her fictional avatar in a manner that she didn't like, despite later featuring artwork of that character in a similar manner later on her channel.
You guys are talking about how awful Illuminaughtii is, but let me remind y'all that she sent her fans to harass and get an artist off the internet because they drew her in a swimsuit, yet one video had fan art of her in a swimsuit. This is the picture of Illuminati in the swimsuit that somebody had drawn, and she had allegedly sent a lot of hate to that person. So here's proof that Illuminati got her fans to harass an artist because they drew her OC in a swimsuit. The fact that she did this was evil. By the way, this is a triangle. This is a character with a triangle as a head. Under the tweet are screenshots from Illuminati's Twitter that states, ew, so there's another gross artist named Ludenwaf drawing my pyramid character in a way I've explicitly mentioned many times that I do not like my character being drawn. Gross motherfucker. I'm going to be just blocking off people that were commenting in support of that post. Y'all ain't fans of mine if you support this BS. And also extremely hypocritical, I do have to agree with the person who pointed this out, because underneath this tweet, they also posted, this is the other artwork in question. And as you can see in this picture, it is much more revealing than the other picture in the swimsuit. Blair gets a Ludenwaf banned for making art of her OC in a one-piece swimsuit, yet this pic of her OC in a two-piece swimsuit becomes the featured pic of her Beachbody video.
For the record, I believe that the reason that Blair had an issue with the picture of her avatar in the one bathing suit as opposed to the other one is because of whom the artist was in the first image. It's not rocket scientist to see that username of the artist and see that it features the word lewd in it, thus giving me the impression that this is an NSFW artist, or at least someone who participates in making NSFW artwork regularly enough. And if we just search up the person, I found the smut. But regardless of said smut, this issue could have been resolved easily with just shooting off a DM saying either, yep, this makes me uncomfortable, please take it down, or even, hey, I have a lot of kids in my audience, can you take down the artwork because I don't want them to find it? Just anything a sensible and reasonable adult could have said and done in regards to this, but no. Blair has to villainize every person that she dislikes, and by doing so, she put that artist in the spotlight and thus exposed her audience to the artwork and artist in question. And the only reason why I'm saying there could have been an issue with this fan art is that with the brief glance I took just to find more of this artist's work, there was indeed a nude version of the image on a different website, and since they had deleted or privated their Twitter account, I'm not sure if the nude version of the image was available on the Twitter during this time in which Blair was throwing a hissy fit over it. If I continued to dig through threads and screenshots and other YouTube videos in regards to all of the things that Blair has done over the years, we would honestly be here for fucking ever. She just has a really bad habit of, through the years, of weaponizing her audience against those that she dislikes, and using her audience or even other creators to do her dirty work for her. And when she couldn't get someone else to do it for her, she uses alt accounts to do it herself. Despite not wanting to dig into every single thing Blair has ever done that would cause problems for herself or those who went against her, here are a few notable individual parties to note that through the course of Blair's continual downfall have come forward with their tales of her mistreatment, further proving the pattern of behavior that she exhibits time and time and time again, that if you aren't kissing her ass, she will try to ruin you. One person who actually came forward in a video by the creator Swoop, and that was another ex-romantic partner to Blair, whom details her mistreatment of him when they were dating, echoing similar abuse tactics that OzMedia did. Both in older videos, 4 years or older, as well as in a more recent interview, email interview with Swoop, Azothan cites Blair's obsession, has phone calls of her screaming at him.
I have seen your Twitter and the bull you've been spewing on there.
The harassment.
You asshat.
The abuse.
Because God knows why, because you're bitter about a breakup because your cash cow left you.
And even cites more of her abusive tendencies, which included things like isolating him from his support network, which we've already seen play out before, but also threats of violence on top of everything else. It's especially important to note within these exchanges with Azothan that there's more proof of Blair's need to weaponize people's mental health against them, purposely using words or experiences she had learned in order to deliver the most emotional distress that she possibly can. In Azothan's situation, he claims that she did so by calling him a burden and mediocre after confiding in her that he used those words when attempting to self-harm himself. Wonderstruck also used words like burden when describing how Blair pushed him to the edge of his sanity.
I made every effort to not be a burden, as it is quite frankly one of my biggest fears in my entire life.
Oz cited in his own video that Blair used his prior trauma related to embezzlement to trick him into signing the deed of trust to his house to her.
Now, To most people, that word may not have a lot of meaning. But to me, when I was 11, my mother was incarcerated for this exact crime, a remnant of the 2008 financial crisis. This taught me a very harsh lesson from an early age. But more importantly, Blair was aware of this past of mine.
Repeat, repeat, repeat. In older videos, and in even this email interview, Azothan shows like innumerable screenshots of Blair's behavior in regards to other content creators, and even her own mods or staff members. If another up-and-coming creator of the same genre as her was getting close to becoming more successful than her, she would use alt accounts and even bots in order to spread hate and smear campaigns to stomp down the competition, and anyone who knew and tried to speak out against her. And I feel, essentially, that part of why Blair is so set on doing these kind of things is because she can't control these creators and she couldn't profit from them. That is not so surprising in hindsight with what we are seeing in the more present day, but it should give light to those currently being affected by her behavior, like the former members of SadMilk. Even if they never realized that Doobie and other alt accounts was Blair, they weren't paranoid into thinking she had a hand in the hate mob that briefly formed against them. The final portion dealing with Azothan within Swoop's video also highlights another terrifying aspect of Blair's character, in which Azothan comes forth to Blair expressing concern that someone was attempting to dox him and was making threats against his life and potentially the life of his family. And instead of doing anything morally correct to do in this situation with this information, Blair instead opted to try to contact the doxer and potentially help in their quest to dox Azothan. And out of fear that this information would be leaked out to this person, Azothan eventually backed off his own quest to highlight Blair's abusive behavior, only for her to spin a narrative that she used an attorney in order to silence him.
A couple months ago, I informed Illuminaughtii about someone on the internet threatening to dox me. We discussed this person in depth, and she even considered making a video about this person to call them out. A Discord user known as Cracker Snatcher, who had made threats of violence against me, as well as attempting to locate and disseminate my location and name. I was saddened to be informed by my friends that she had joined a Warcraft 3 Discord server solely for the purpose of providing and exchanging personal information with this extremely dangerous and unstable individual. After discovering these two concerning facts, I messaged Illuminaughtii and left her a voicemail to let her know that I was backing off the idea of making this video at all, for fear of both my financial and physical safety. She would then go on to publicly brag about scaring me into silence with these actions, and this video is being made now due to her once again believing that she can try to inspire fear and compliance through threats, frivolous litigation, and intimidation.
Despite all of Blair's attempts to completely control every narrative about her, and her attempts at intimidation with legal threats against anyone who has an issue with her, some people who have had encounters with her have not stood down, and have even gained more courage in the pursuit of spreading the truth about Blair and her selfish and heinous shit she continues to do. And one of these creators was Madison from cruelworldhappymind. It's hard to imagine with just how far we've come in this video. I think my recording says we're at 2 hours already. That all these things about Blair were shoved into the spotlight due to her pointing the finger and making wild accusations against Legal Eagle. I think that entire situation happened not only because of Blair's ego and propensity for being jealous of more successful creators or about to be more successful creators, particularly men also, if you haven't noted that throughout this entire process, but I also think Blair's confidence was part and due with the fact that she just didn't believe people kept records against her for some reason. Or, again, that she just thought that people were too scared to, come out against her. I don't know. We saw it throughout her own Illuminaughtii exposed video that she posted, in which she used screenshots to spin false stories, and even no screenshots at all to tell tales she believed that no one would be able to counter against her. And as such, we saw again and again through the SadMilk responses that her former friends were not so stupid as to not keep records of all the things that she said and did. As sad as it is to say, I do kind of find it entertaining that she's getting a taste of her own medicine, especially in regards to the entire character assassination attempt that she did on Wonderstruck. I especially believe she definitely did not expect him to release screenshots, bank statements, and more to counter her claims against him. Maybe she didn't think that people kept records or would show these records that they did have due to her being overtly ready to threaten legal action against them, like I mentioned, but Blair also didn't really take into account the people that she generally screwed over that she held no legal grounds against at all. It's this entire notion that Blair might not have expected people to keep receipts against her that she had like one-off tiffs with or stuff like that, that I believe cruelworldhappymind, aka Madison, was able to come forward with her own exchange with Blair and how Blair tried to manipulate her and essentially, shit on her career. The issues Blair had with Legal Eagle and his editor could have just been chalked up to a misunderstanding and poor comprehension skills, like I've mentioned countless times already. If this was the first incident. But since Blair has a long history of being horrific to those around her, people were able to dig up the time in which she attempted to fuck over Madison, and as such sparked Madison's response here. Years ago, when Madison was a newer content creator, she made a video about Tyra Banks having an MLM makeup line. After her video was posted, Blair's channel came out with a video on the same exact topic. It was brought to her attention through her comment section that Blair's video contained some pretty noticeable similarities to Madison's video. Enough similarities that Madison did not believe that it was just due to the videos sharing the same subject matter. She ended up messaging Blair, expressing discomfort from the similarities between the two videos and wanted to verify that Blair was not copying her content.
But she literally tried to destroy me because a few people left comments on my video, like this one, letting me know that she was making really similar content to me. So I decided to DM her privately and let her know, and she tried to literally end me. Hey hun, sorry I had to. It's an inside joke for anti-MLMers. So I thought that would be a funny opener. I don't know if you know of my channel. I'm a really small YouTuber who's been inspired by the content you make. I got a few messages about the video you posted about Tyra's MLM because I've done a video on that topic. I'm really happy you're spreading more awareness on this topic, but it did low-key feel like a lot of what was said in the beginning of the video was really similar to the things I discussed regarding Tyra's MLM and her controversies, the rabies bit, etc. Coincidences happen, and I'm sure as a larger YouTuber, you're accused of stealing content from people you've never even heard of or seen before, so I get it if this message comes across that way. With the intention of just being open and honest, I was really hurt by the video though, because you're someone who has really inspired me and the content I make, so I wanted to reach out and hopefully have an honest but positive discussion on it all. Either way, I still appreciate the work you do.
Madison took care to make sure that this was dealt with privately, presumably for the sake of both herself and Blair, since having two videos of a similar topic isn't a cancelable offense by any means. I mean, you can literally just look up on YouTube a subject matter and you'll probably find dozens of videos all sharing that same exact topic. But instead of responding to Madison's message, Blair began to subtweet about Madison and post things on her Instagram stories or Instagram post or whatever about her, and even later went on a podcast months later to essentially just shit talk Madison.
What I did have happen though recently, it's a very small YouTuber. She DM'd me on Instagram claiming that I copied her. She claimed that I copied her video that she had done maybe a couple weeks ago, right? So she messages me and she goes, "I'm just really disappointed because you're someone I look up to and you copied my video and I want credit."
Yeah.
And I was like, I will remember this. I won't say anything, but I'll
To note within this podcast, she mentions never even having known about the anti-MLM community prior to the offending video, but that statement is just ridiculously easy to disprove, knowing that Blair got popular on her channel from reading off of the anti-MLM Reddit posts.
Something I recently learned apparently is there is this whole anti-MLM community, right? I kind of thought I was on my own little island.
Blair's initial big break before she transitioned into commentary content was Reddit content, particularly Reddit content reading off of the anti-MLM subreddit. But Illuminaughtii ended up deleting all of her Reddit content of this style as she transitioned into her corporate commentary style that she does today. As you can see from her social blade, when there's a massive dip in views, that's because she deleted all of her Reddit content.
I honestly don't even know the point of her lying about this, but whatever. Despite not using Madison's name in this podcast, this is another long stretch of examples of Blair forming smear campaigns and false narratives of those that confront her, and was definitely an attempt to make her competition look bad. Without showing the original message to the other parties within this podcast, Blair proceeds to then just twist the contents of the message in order to make herself look like a victim. From someone who might have been completely unfamiliar with Blair's knack for fabricating evidence and spinning wild stories to paint herself in the light of the victim, especially back then, because, you know, we know in hindsight now, but this was like a while ago, one could have tried to make the argument that the podcast wasn't about Madison at all, which, I mean, if I was a toxic bitch being confronted after a podcast, that's what I would have tried to claim, but Madison believed that it was about her due to certain details of Blair's story actually lining up with the message and, you know, stuff about Madison. Things like being a smaller content creator, the particular sources that Madison had listed in her video, stating that she was a fan of Blair's work, and even details of Madison's video, like drinking coffee and being distracted while filming. And just to point out shade here, it's a little funny how Blair was dissing Madison's supposed sources for her videos, because Madison ended up interviewing another content creator who mentions that Blair and her team would infiltrate research groups to swipe information without crediting the original people within the group.
While, of course, it's difficult to know exactly what files were pulled, what pictures were saved, what screenshots were taken, we don't know for sure, but, I mean, come on. There's no denying that stuff that was taken from that Facebook group was used in the video, like, period. And obviously I don't have like solid proof of what it was exactly she got, what information she used, but all I know is that I was never credited personally. What they did do was put the Facebook link in, like, 'cause she has like a document of sources that she does for her videos, so she put the link to the Facebook group as a source, but it's a private Facebook group and you have to like request to join it. It's archived now, so I don't think anyone can join it. So instead of crediting the people who were actually doing the work, she just put a link to a Facebook group.
Worse yet, as you look into this accusation more, it would turn out that Blair and her team member for whatever, script writing, research, whatever, was explicitly told not to use the sources and testimonies within the research group for her video, as there were legal issues revolving around the topic of the company they were researching. With so many different accounts of Blair making up stories and trying to villainize people that stand up against her, and even now her apparent need to push down others in order to raise herself up, I just have to ask myself, like, why? She says she sees a therapist, and this kind of behavior is definitely something she or someone close to her needs to like bring up to that therapist, because doing this kind of stuff over and over and over again, repeat with no growth or change, just makes it seem like there's like something seriously wrong with Blair that she might not even be aware of. It's an unfortunate character flaw of mine, I think, that I have to think the best of people, you know, even when they prove themselves to be vile and malicious assholes. And I just have a hard time thinking of people like this with no other underlying issues beyond that's just who they are. Like I said, it's a character flaw I really need a break eventually, because as much as it sucks, the world is just full of shit people, and sometimes they just can't be redeemed. Sometimes there doesn't really need to be a reason for their behavior, they just suck. After seeing the podcast, because of course she was going to see it, Madison reached out to Blair again in an attempt to clear the air between them.
I delusionally thought that maybe messaging with her still via DMs, we could just resolve this and it would all be over. Last time reaching out to you, sorry if my DMs have been annoying. I just feel like there's been a misunderstanding and didn't realize how offended you were by my message until someone sent me the podcast where you mentioned me. I understand how you'd be frustrated by my DM, but I didn't intend for it to come across in a harsh way. There's never been any beef on my end. I don't want beef or anyone thinking I hate them.
But these messages would go unanswered for the time being, which made Madison release her own statement on the matter, including releasing the original message to clear her name and show how much Blair had twisted the original contents of the DM to fit into this strange and unnecessary narrative that she was spinning. It was only after Blair was featured in this section of Madison's video, which again, Madison didn't even like mention Blair's name throughout this entire thing. Blair did not react well to all of this, obviously, and proceeded to go on a tweeting spree about the subject.
But on Twitter the next day, she literally lost her ever-living mind.
She was tweeting about doing a live stream on Twitch debunking some claims made against her, and a lot of people knew exactly what this was.
It's here that I could like argue for anyone who is still on the fence and thinking that maybe Blair's podcast speech wasn't about Madison, that this kind of like confirms that it was. After all she had to say at any given moment was that there was a misunderstanding and the comments were not about Madison. Instead, Blair made statements about making an entire debunking stream to take Madison down, which Madison brings up that at this time, it was public knowledge that she was pregnant and extremely ill from her pregnancy. Stress in early pregnancy is extremely dangerous and contributes to a lot of health issues, so I find this to be another example of Blair potentially using someone's mental health as well as physical health as a tactic to attack them. Was it possible that she wanted Madison to have enough stress to actually cause harm to her?
Also, this is so stressful for me. I don't want to be dealing with drama. Physically, I can't. My doctors are recommending me to limit stress as much as possible, to the point where I'm this close to getting offline altogether. I literally cannot handle this, because if I lose my pregnancy over this stress, I would lose it. Mentally, I would lose it.
Anywhere during this situation, Blair could have just reached out to dispel the notion that the statements were about Madison before this entire thing even boiled over to the point that it had reached. In fact, if she would have just answered the very first DM that Madison ever sent about the Tyra Banks video with something like, "It's just a coincidence, we must have used the same sources, best wishes," this entire situation probably could have been avoided. When Blair finally did reach out to Madison, it was through a threat of the upcoming debunking live stream against her, as well as claims that she was planning on making follow-up videos plural, against her as well, all while finally stating that the comments on the podcast were not about Madison at all, right? We believe that.
So, I'm going to be defending my statements against your claims publicly. There were no identifying characteristics that it was you. You are the one who decided to say, "That was me," when nothing said it was about you. Is there any statement you would like to provide to me before I proceed? I'm not 100% what to even talk out with you, since you've decided to make this a public issue. Is there some common ground we can even find in this?
Madison replied with stating that it was obvious that Blair was indeed talking about her and that all she wanted was to hash things out privately to solve where the hostility was coming from on Blair's end, even stating that she would even delete that section of the video that she referenced Blair so that they would be able to solve their issues.
I would love to understand from your perspective why this all went down the way it did. If we can work things out privately, I'll delete that entire section of the video. I offered to delete that section of the video. So then I said, but I don't understand why you acted the way you did. Attacked me publicly. A lot of people knew it was me you were talking about in the podcast and DM'd me. So you didn't hide my identity very well. I don't know. I only showed what you said, and my intention was only to include what was mentioning me in the podcast. I didn't go out of my way to try and find dirt on you or dig up more things I have a problem with. I just want to understand from your perspective why you did that. It did genuinely hurt me. I tried to reach out before in a kind way and you never responded. I don't get it. I want to understand what the fuck happened.
And it was here that Blair did not even try to dispute anymore if the original podcast statements were about Madison, as she feebly attempted to do so before. It was through these DMs where the conversation eventually moved to a phone call instead, one which Madison believed to be private, only now to have confirmation from someone close to Blair that Blair had recorded the phone call in order to potentially use it against Madison at a later date. It was worrying since we all now know that Blair likes to crop, snip, censor, and rearrange things in order to create stories in her favor. Madison voices a similar concern as I have here. What exactly is Blair going to use that call for? And how will she twist it to demonize Madison? Or worse, win? When I was just under the belief that Blair had bad reading comprehension, which I still do to be completely frank, I was able to just chalk most of her antics up to being a moron, right? But even morons are capable of doing real harm to those around them, especially when they have a wealth of literal monetary wealth as well as just power over others. Without the rose-colored lenses now, Madison was able to take stock of the issues relating to Blair after their phone call, which included Blair sending an article about subbotting to Madison.
After our call, she sends me the supposed subbotting website that made an article on me and told me that I should get a lawyer to take down this this article so it doesn't look like I'm buying sub bots.
Which was low-key an accusation in my opinion, since we know that she had accused another creator called r/ of subbotting, like, in order to take him down before, when she felt that he was getting more successful than her in like the Reddit video community on YouTube.
Now, I know some of you are familiar with Blair's history with r/, where she accused him of using subbots. She has said multiple times that other YouTubers use subbots, particularly ones that she doesn't like. So yeah, I personally think that she lied about the whole r/ using subbots thing.
There was also the time in which Blair would point out that it was easy to find out where Madison lived due to an Instagram post, which is creepy and honestly feels very threatening, which Madison in her own video agreed in that regard, especially when Madison shows a screenshot of Blair publicly stating that they both lived near one another.
She also said that from my Instagram, she could tell exactly where I live. So after our phone call, Blair literally tweets about us both living in Colorado and living near each other, and how after this phone call we're besties and we're gonna meet up for coffee, and goes on a live stream and talks about the fact that I live in Colorado.
We both found out we both live in Colorado and we live like an hour away from each other.
So she told me privately, hey, these posts on Instagram show exactly where you live, you better delete them soon, and then goes online right after our phone call and tells all of her followers, hey, Madison lives right near me.
While not exactly doxing, it is extremely concerning how Blair dropped this information to her large follower base while Madison, a very beautiful woman, was pregnant and extremely vulnerable at the time. An action that is honestly so horrific and dangerous, especially coming off of having a very public spat between the two of them. Madison states that for a couple days following like the two of them hashing out their issues via the phone call, that she believed that they like could have become friends, but Blair like abruptly cut Madison off when she found out that Tipster had like archived Madison's original video section about Blair, thus immortalizing Blair's transgression against her. Another content creator who was fucked over by Blair was someone called TommyC, and TommyC is like, you know, back in the day, back in the past kind of thing for Blair. While working with TommyC is when Blair played the part of an over-the-top caricature of a social justice warrior, as was often negatively depicted in the old ages of like anti-feminist Tumblr, essentially.
Sarah J. Warren is unapologetically feminist, and if they don't like it, then I would love to drink their overprivileged male tears. Okay.
It comes to no surprise with a channel featuring a character meant to make fun of feminism and general social justice movements that their viewpoints wouldn't really align with the type of content that Blair is currently making or wanted to make at the time, maybe. And watching TommyC's message to Illuminaughtii's exposed video or whatever, it doesn't really change my view on that. With the general humor style of Blair's old content featured on TommyC's channel, it was filled with instances of mocking mental health and other "this is offensive, thus it is funny" kind of humor, which, gross, but whatever. Sometime during Blair's stint with his channel, she had decided to leave for one reason or another. Many people have cited that it was allegedly due to a fat joke she didn't like, but it's also to note that Blair herself used a very similar fat joke, thus pointing out her hypocrisy yet again, similarly to her using the R slur while having issues when other people used it. Now, I personally don't think that Blair left this project or channel or whatever the fuck it was due to a fat joke, which I'm sure most people with rational thinking brains also don't think that either. I'll put on my tinfoil hat for a moment, but I think my theory is pretty well backed up by the context we already know about Blair as a person. She is greedy. From Oz's video, we had learned that she was a part of like the crypto space, despite voicing a narrative against them on her channel. In Wonder's video, we had learned that she was trying to make a company town or neighborhood as a smaller scale, despite making a video about how exploitative company towns were. And now we see that Blair had been a part of what I'm assuming was a very right-wing circle, despite toting left-wing messages now. While I believe people can indeed learn and change and better themselves over time, yada yada. With Blair's continual, repeated, manipulative, and abusive behavior and history of saying or doing one thing publicly, only for her to be actually doing something completely opposite in private, it leads me to believe it's unlikely that any of her viewpoints have actually changed, whatever viewpoints they could have been to begin with. I firmly believe that while Blair was trying to build up her own personal audience on her own channel, she made the realization that content creators who use the kind of like humor and language that TommyC's group did didn't tend to grow as fast or become as popular in the space that she wanted to occupy. And with the growing propensity for more left-leaning individuals to call for accountability to problematic people in droves, I'm sure she believed it would have been safer to unalign herself with TommyC and that entire crowd in order to better grow her audience. Basically, it would have been hard for her to become a voice of reason, shutting down toxic workplace practices and calling out assholes on Reddit if people didn't view you as having like the same morals as the ones that you were preaching about. Basically, I think she was scared of being canceled back then and wanted to avoid it. When it comes to how she screwed over TommyC specifically, is that sometime during her duration on his channel, she had admin access to his YouTube account in some regard, that she was able to scrub through his content and delete most of the content that featured her or mentioned her in some regard. This effectively tanked a lot of things for Tommy's channel, most of all leading to massive revenue loss from anything those videos had generated before they were deleted, and, payouts issued kind of stuff. Additionally, he states that the videos for the most part weren't archived, so they have just kind of been lost to the ether at this point, as he did not have copies of them. So not only did he lose out on views and revenue from those videos, but also the potential memories of viewing them even in private. Obviously, regardless of his or anybody's political views or comedy takes or whatever, that is a complete bitch move to do. But Blair can't do anything like a reasonable adult, especially if it makes her look bad. What she should have done was discussing parting ways with Tommy and even requesting a statement be made by either him alone or the both of them jointly that she would be leaving the channel for other ventures or whatever. But of course, Blair opted instead of taking the route that would hurt someone else's career because she generally just seems incapable of parting ways from people both personally and professionally without leaving a negative impact on them. Her tactics to avoid people knowing her political past obviously backfired, since there are still clips circling around of her time a part of TommyC's channel, or at the least his friend group, because there's never been truer words spoken online than if it's on the internet, it's there forever. As I mentioned, way before, I don't remember how long ago at this point, during the massive wave of allegations and uncovering tons and tons of past information about Blair, she had made a post on her Twitter account about being aware of the false allegations and how she's going to be working with her team in order to find all the facts to presumably clear her name legally, yada yada. Now, what I believe this really translates to is, of course, she's going to find the best methods possible in order to take legal action against more of her detractors than just the two that she's already sent cease and desist notices to. Which, as a general reminder here, the reason why she was even able to send out cease and desist letters, apparently, to Wonder and Oz is because she had gotten them to sign, bogus legal documents that they didn't really have, relevant access to, their own legal representation to explain to them. I have no doubt that she is trying to see if there's, anything she can do as far as, attacking Click or OneTopic further with legal action, but we'll have to wait and see. Although I imagine going after Click might be more of a hassle than it's worth, considering he doesn't even live in America, but with Blair's history of being rather relentless against those that she has issues with, maybe she's willing to fork over the extra cash in order to fuck with him. After her Twitter post, her Twitter seems to have been, fairly inactive, despite her YouTube channel still, pumping out content at breakneck speed. Her continuing to upload content despite going dark on Twitter made people a little curious about the places that she could still be active online, which is how we end up with her Patreon server getting leaked by the creator FPS Diesel. He goes on to explain that he paid $30 a month to be her patron in order to get access to this exclusive Discord server and see what she's been up to for several months since her initial cancellation. And honestly, I won't be surprised if his video ends up getting struck or have some sort of privacy violation eventually, if that's a thing on YouTube, but I'm not sure. But regardless, Blair finds this video, which I'm sure she already did because Tipster covered it. She's probably pissed and trying to find every loophole imaginable to get it taken down. Since the beginning of all the drama, it's been seen through the Discord server that she's been using the server itself as a way of venting her frustrations and gathering quote-unquote evidence for her legal causes against her detractors, and overall just surrounding herself with hype men who really just don't see the error of her ways.
There would also come a point when Illuminaughtii would outright ban anybody from her community for simply interacting in any way with anybody who she disliked, and would go as far as to block every account who followed people she didn't like.
The first screenshot that FPS Diesel really shows, I believe was actually like before most of this drama. I'll have to like double check like the timestamp here. But basically it's Blair admitting that she keeps a drive full of information on people in case she like ever needs to speak out against them.
One thing that was always speculated was Blair having a Google Drive with what, in my opinion, is blackmail. Well, Blair had bragged about it in her server, so there's the evidence of that.
Which I find very curious because, like, throughout this entire saga, we've seen Blair weaponize personal information about others, both publicly as herself, as well as, like, with her alt accounts. She claims that if she uses this information that she's had hoarded, that it would just end up as a payday for the people she talks about, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me personally. If you have so much information to shut these people down, wouldn't that instead help you in stomping down their platforms and thus ruining their reputation and income? Sounds like you are, like, talking out of your ass, but then again, she could just want to keep the information private in order to use it in a legal case that she brings to court, you know, assuming that she really has, like, all this blackmail information that could be used in a court case. I don't know. I just find it really curious how personal Blair gets with, like, these screenshots, knowing that this Discord server is for people who are paying a rather hefty chunk of change to her Patreon in order to become a part of it. It kind of feels like people are paying her in order to be their friend, which overall just seems strange and feels like a little inappropriate from a creator and fan perspective, honestly. Sometime during the height of, like, everything going on with Blair that I didn't manage to, like, squeeze in was that Blair was a part of a podcast called The Leftist Mafia, and how during her cancellation they dropped her from the project. In these leaked messages from her Discord, we see that she goes on seething about how they had turned on her. Obviously, through this server, she also vents about the former members of SadMilk that spoke out against her. Pointing out more of the obvious, but I feel it's really important to state that this is a private server, remember? This is a place where Blair can say whatever she wants, crop and chop screenshots, and say and spin whatever horrific story about these former friends, and no one here is really going to dispute her since they are all paying her to be their friend. One such case of this is her putting into the world that Wonder would supposedly make Nazi jokes to her, even knowing she's supposedly Jewish. Which I only say supposedly at that regard because we've seen way too many cried wolf situations going on involving Blair, in which she will say whatever she can in order to victimize herself further. Did Wonder actually make a Nazi joke against Blair? Is Blair really Jewish? This ends up being a matter of no one would even know about these messages within her server if not for them being leaked, so honestly, who knows the truth, right? She also rips into OzMedia, accusing him of actual crimes like stealing $200K from her and refusing to pay it back, and that he was really the mastermind plotting her entire downfall this whole time.
Oz has definitely gotten it the worst, though, being an ex of Blair's. This was leaked by Blair and a living soy jack. She alleges things like he was abusive, owes money, took home more money than what she made, end quote.
It's just so frustrating as like an outside observer for this, with her claiming that he was trying to force her to take him back because she does not have to drop any proof of her claims within the server in order to be believed. It's also really funny to me that she's claiming within the server that Oz was like the mastermind behind like this entire cancellation because, did he make you start shit with Legal Eagle? Because remember, that's how all of this fucking started. In this screenshot here, she even like goes into stating that Oz was sending someone like animal torture videos, which, apparently this was the video that was sent.
Alleges that he sent Allie a mod videos of hamsters dying. I showed that to Oz and he was able to provide a clip. It is not that.
Which I don't really think this was animal torture, but go off, I guess. Maybe the hamster doesn't like getting spun in the wheel. Okay. Anyway, Blair also goes on to say that she's going to file a court case against him for domestic violence, for emotional and financial abuse, which The thing about the financial abuse is starting to sound a whole lot like a case of Darvo in action, because from Oz's recountment, which he has stated publicly, he's not hiding behind private Discord servers with this, he was the one manipulated into like this extreme amount of debt until he had to get loans through Blair in order to pay the debts back, which then resulted in her having the power over his very home. And when it comes to like a court of law and everything, this is like literally going to be so easy to disprove because like one person is going to have the paperwork for all these loans, right? But that's what makes this Darvo, because Blair is accusing Oz of everything. Like she's like completely switching everything around. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She, of course, did end up throwing a fit when Oz had released like his update video on her, but that was mostly saying that she was serious about getting her lawyers involved now, as if like she wasn't serious before with sending cease and desist letters, but I digress, I guess. Eventually, though, other people seem to have gotten, like, the same idea as FPS Diesel, like, according to Blair in, like, the Discord server. Other people had began to subscribe to Blair's Patreon in order to gain access to the server, in order to dig up information, which resulted in her mass deleting messages and channels in order to hide things from them. But the damage is already done, the information's out there. Also, as a side note, there's this other video, like, floating around by, like, a smaller content creator, in which it talks about Blair's Patreon massively jumping in numbers recently. The beginning of the video is kind of cheeky about it, making it seem like this is a case of, like, essentially botting, number manipulation, that kind of stuff, only to reveal, like, towards the end of the video that her paid membership actually never changed from what it was previously, and rather this is just a essence like of Patreon's join for free feature. While it is possible that the numbers in this join for free like mode could be manipulated in some like inorganic way, like the before mentioned bots and stuff, to make up for that apparent massive spike, or she could have just informed people that the feature was there now. But the fact that she has a join for free feature on her page actually like has nothing to do with her. Like, as far as I'm aware, everyone on Patreon has the join for free button on their page or like somewhere on their page. It basically essentially acts as the same as just following someone on any regular social media platform. While mine doesn't seem to be like a huge button in your face like in the middle of the screen, it's still there for people to click if you know where to find it. So, being the only time in this video I'll like kind of half-heartedly defend her, I guess, the join for free thing is not Blair trying to rip people off by any means, it's just a feature on Patreon, so it's kind of a reach in my opinion, but content is content, so no shade to that creator. As of right now, that's as much information as I can include about this saga revolving Blair and the endless amounts of controversy she has caused or took part in. I'm sure if I really kept digging around longer and longer, I could, like, unearth more, but sometimes it's worth just to leave well enough alone. A lesson Blair really needs to learn for herself. From what started as Blair being just like a moron with no reading comprehension skills, this entire situation has spiraled beyond what most people could have ever even predicted. Blair's ego got too close to the sun, as they say, when she decided it would be a good idea to change her usual motif of ruining a smaller creator by going after a much larger one instead. I don't think she could have ever saw this shitstorm coming as it began to beat at her doors. Maybe she just thought that since it was well known among her former colleagues that she was not afraid to utilize the legal system against her detractors, that no one would come forward with their tales of mistreatment by her. Much of this situation really stems from things that Blair could have easily avoided if she were just honest with herself and those around her, if she just acted like a reasonable fucking adult. If she would have just answered Madison's original DM about potentially copying her Tyra Banks video, they could have resolved things in a more professional manner. If she never decided to claim that she had no idea what the anti-MLM community was, despite making anti-ML content, she might have been able to find and be a part of real community doing work for the good of society. If she never decided to villainize those that she got into disagreements with, instead of just talking things out with people like a fucking adult, she might not have burned the bridges in SadMilk as badly as she did. If she didn't accuse someone of condoning pedophilia and blasting someone else's very personal mental health struggles for the world to see, she might not have had all of her past transgressions brought up against her for the world to see. If she would have just stopped with making the constant excuses and trying to find the next scapegoat for her actions, if she would have just simply sincerely apologized and moved on from everything, Blair might still be as successful as she once was. Instead, she's allowed this pyramid that she worked for years to build up just crumble apart, simply because if you weren't with her, you were against her. Is this the longest video I ever made? Probably, considering I am confident that this is the longest script I've ever wrote. I don't plan on making videos this outrageously long very often, like here and there maybe, so I hope everyone watching will also stick around for my shorter videos as well, because they're frankly a little more silly and a lot more fun to produce. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I am begging you to also subscribe to my channel for more content, please. This video is brought to you by Patreon, so thank you so much to Chrome, Ippo, Alec, and Ashley for subscribing. If you want to support me on Patreon, tiers start as little as $1 a month. Check out the link in the description. And with that, thank you again for watching all the way to this point. It means a lot. This is Minji signing off until next time.
No! No!
Need to be strong, every breath hold, 'cause I can't move on till I